Hey everyone, welcome to day 2 of the live stream system. Before we get started, I just want to go over a quick bit of housekeeping. If you're watching this and at any point in time you experience some fuzzy video or maybe interruption of audio, please make sure you have all the apps and any other programs on your computer running shut down. And if you can, hardwire your computer to the internet versus being on Wi-Fi. A lot of the quality issues you may experience are often caused by interruptions on your connection. And so just a quick bit there, because I know yesterday a few people had a few moments where the quality kind of dropped and they were wondering why that was. And so just so you know, oftentimes it's based on your connection. So anything you can do to minimize the use of that, if you have Wi-Fi on your cell phone and you're on the computer, turn that off. Make sure all the apps are closed down. If you have stuff running in the background, all of those things will aid. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started with day 2 of the live stream system. I'm AJ Roberts, and with me is Jason Fladlin, the $100 million webinar guy. And what are we going over today?
Oh, well, we're going over how to get $100 at a time to get to 100 million, right? Well, kind of in a sense, right? Because if you could put $100 in for traffic and get more than $100 out, you could scale to $100 million. And that's going to be what we're going to be discussing here today. So if you were with us yesterday, congratulations. You're now one of my favorite people. You hung in with us for about 3 hours. If you're new, welcome. We're going to get a little crazy today. Forgive me if we do go over 2 hours, although we're going to stay under 2 hours, as much as possible as we're going to try to. But if I outvalue you, don't get upset. Instead, sing our praises, as you have been doing. We got so many good feedback from day 1. That makes me happy, warms the cockles of my heart. AJ, I don't know what cockles are, but it sounds cool, right? So we're going to talk about traffic today. We talked about offer yesterday. It's kind of like this. This is the biggest mistake people make with webinars, is they think about it like a concert. So let me give you an example. Like, you wouldn't sell tickets to a concert and then say, hey, once you show up at this concert, then we'll tell you who the main event is. Then we'll tell you who the opening acts are. But just trust me, here's a ticket, buy this ticket, come to the concert. So a lot of people, when they think about webinar marketing, they think about, how do I get traffic, and I want to drive traffic before I create my webinar. And I'm like, okay, great, good luck, because you can't drive traffic to something that doesn't exist. Well, it's very hard. I'll actually show you a hack later, but first we got to set the proper foundation. And so essentially, you have the pull, you have the talent, you have the main draw, then you drive the traffic. And so we talked about that yesterday with your offer and your story and your message. Now that you have the right bait, it's time to go catch some fish. And so nothing is done in a vacuum. So today, we're going to talk about getting some traffic.
Yeah, building an audience. How do we attract an audience to buy what it is we want to sell them, or to train them or give them information? And really, we're going to dive in. There's a lot of different ways, right? Building your own audience, using other people's audiences, using paid traffic, and by the end of today, you'll know how to use all 3 of those and be able to determine what's best for you right now so you can get started. And yesterday we shared how to actually do the webinar, so now you know how to use your story, you know the structure to do, you know how to make an offer, you know what bonuses to have, use scarcity, so you know actually how to run the webinar. Today we're going to show you how to get people to actually show up, and by the end of the day, you'll be able to determine which method is best for me so I can get started right now, because our goal is by the end of these 3 days, you can actually go out and run your first webinar within the next week or 2 and actually have customers and fans.
Yeah, and you only need 1, by the way, because 1 gets to 2, 2 gets to 3, 3 gets to 4. So we don't need a lot, we need a little, and then we can get a lot from a little. So let's talk about making paid ads work, because that's what everybody wants to do first. They have this dream in their mind that if I can get people that I don't know, put an ad in front of them, boy, I can just laugh all the way to the bank, right? Audience, offer, message. This is all advertising, but specific to paid advertising. You got to have the right audience. You have to have the right offer to that audience, and then you have to present that offer, the bridge from offer to audience, is your message. And so the biggest advantage I could teach you in any sort of marketing campaign, but specifically with this type of marketing to a webinar, is customization. We are going to granularly focus in on a very tight audience, because gone are the days where, hey, if I want to advertise to a male audience, we'll just, buy ad space on NASCAR races, right? And that's where we put our, different types of things that go on there that you see every second of every commercial break. We can now micro-target.
Yeah, I just saw yesterday where they were going over the Super Bowl and how much GMC spent on the Hummer commercial versus how much Elon spent on releasing the Tesla Cybertruck and the buzz and everything he created. And that's kind of the same situation we're in. Luckily now is we have the ability to micro-target and really build an audience that's interested in what we're looking at without spending the $40 million for 30 seconds at the Super Bowl.
Yes, exactly. And let's do some math first, because that's everybody's favorite thing to do in business. Not really, but let's just think about it like this. What if you only got 20 people on your webinar? Everybody I know who starts in this webinar thing and all shiny and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed says, oh, cool, I'm going to go out there and crush it with my webinar. And then they see, I got 20 people on, I'm a miserable failure, Jason. And I say, well, hold on a second, let's run the numbers. If you have 20 people on a webinar and they're the right people and they're targeted, and you get 3 of them to buy, and you sell a $1,000 item, and it takes you 1 hour to deliver this webinar, you've just made $3,000 an hour. You will get no sympathy from the general public if you go out and complain and say, I only made $3,000 in a single hour, woe is me, right? So you have to put things in perspective. When I am the $100 million webinar man, and AJ here is crushing it and doing all this amazing stuff, yes, we've been around the block more times than you have. So comparing us to you is not a very helpful state of mind to be in. Compare yourself to what you want to accomplish and then put it in perspective. Because if you can sell 3 in an hour at 1,000, I guarantee you next week you can do that again, and I guarantee you by next month you can turn 3 into 4 into 5 into 6. So let's put it in perspective. Small wins lead to big wins, and that's what we want to engineer here for you today. I want you to think of this like fishing. So I'm going to run that back again just because, ooh, look at that. Oh, that's pretty cool, isn't it? I want you to think of advertising like fishing. What fish do you want to catch? Do you want to catch the crappy little minnows who wouldn't even whet your appetite? Or do you want to catch those big, wild salmon, king salmon, that are very luscious and very rich tasting and can feed you for days? What body of water do you want to fish in? If you try to drop your fishing pole into the toilet, you're not going to catch anything. But if you go to the right places where the best fish are, you can put your pole in the water, not be an expert at fishing, and still do relatively well. And then what type of bait should you use? So if you want to use an old dirty boot to catch fish, probably not going to work. But if you use the right bait for the right fish and you're fishing for them in the right pond, that's what traffic looks like. So the hardest thing I can do for you is to teach you a one-size-fits-all traffic strategy, because that is impossible. It'd be easier for me to teach you how to live to be 1,000,000 years old than give you a one-size-fits-all traffic strategy. So that's the very first thing I want you to take away from this is, if we jump up and down in puddles, we make splashes. If we jump up and down in the ocean, nobody even notices. You're going to have to start small. Before Gary Vee was keynoting at the largest spaces that ever existed in the marketing world, he was just some kid shooting straight to YouTube videos in his dad's wine store. You start small, and from small, you go large. Don't try to save the world if you can't even save one person. Start by saving one person, and then go and save the world. And to me, AJ, I think that's where people fail with traffic, is they go too big too soon.
I think that's where they fail in business in general. You mentioned earlier it's about one sale, and most people are so focused on how do I go make 100 sales, and a lot of people will teach that. Okay, what's your goal? Okay, you want to make $1 million this year. Okay, if you're selling this product, you need to sell 1,000 people to reach your goal. And then you go, well, how do I get 1,000 people versus how do I get the first 1,000, right? And then how do I get the next 1,000? And that's really what the goal is, and is that when you're looking at traffic, how do I get the first registration? And then the second registration. And oftentimes, if you're spending money on traffic or anything like that, people will get, like you said, a half dozen registrations, and they'll say, well, that was a failure because I didn't, make my money back. Well, was it a failure, or do we just need to optimize the process? If we focus on one, how do we get one registration? Then we focus on how do we get one person to show up for the webinar? Then we focus how do we get one sale from the webinar? that begins the process. And I think that that's what so many people do is they try and then they don't get the results that they hope for because they have these massive goals, which there's nothing wrong with massive goals. However, they feel so discouraged because let's say they set a goal to sell $20,000 on their first webinar and they don't do that, they only sold $1,000. They'll see that as a failure versus saying, wait a minute, I sold $1,000 for my first webinar. If I do this again and again and again, how much and what is the possibilities here? So I think it's just a small shift, and people have to realize that it's about what's the next one. It's always about the next one.
Right. Yep. I don't want to sell everybody. I just want to sell the next person. That's what I always think about. So let's talk about how to sell that next person. Let me give you a weird example to start this off, okay? Because just to show you, it is not about digital media. It's not about fancy whiz-bang, crazy tech and all this kind of stuff. Obviously, you need the engine to run the business, but this was a postcard that we created. Now, postcards are the worst direct mail sequence that you could ever hope to run, but some days when you have 5 minutes to shove something out the door, you go with a postcard. And this postcard says, you buy products on Amazon, why not sell your own? And then it has a call to action where it says a free webinar training reveals how you can sell your own physical product line on Amazon without ever having to touch a product. Because this was a webinar we had. This is a webinar that we did well with our own list. This is a webinar that we did extremely well with affiliates. And this is a webinar that we were paying to advertise on places like Facebook and YouTube and wherever else, right? And so we have some bullet points. We have a big call to action, different URLs for different audiences. And how do we target these audiences? Well, we rented lists, actual mailing lists. So we rented lists from, the make money niche, people that make money products. We rented lists from chiropractors, believe it or not, because we had discovered that from our audiences there were lots of chiropractors. We had rented options traders lists. I'm going to show you a lot more of where this intelligence came from later. And we had rented life coach lists and even numerology lists, which is crazy, right? Some of those worked well, some of those didn't work so well. But believe it or not, we were testing these audiences for cheaper than we could test Facebook traffic. And by the way, do you think you get more attention and mind share in a mailbox or on a news feed? And the answer is in the mailbox. So we were running these ads. So I think when a lot of people think traffic, they think these big, complex, very multi-touch sequence, multifaceted sequences. Now, I have made, maybe you know him, Ezra Firestone, one of the most famous Facebook advertisers, one of the best in the world. Ezra has said, I have made him more money as a partner than any other partner he's ever worked with, because we would create webinars for Ezra as an exclusive marketing. We'd get exclusive marketing rights to his products. We would market them for him, and then we would help him convert the traffic that he got. And one of the awesomest things I've ever seen is when we were training with Ezra, he would show people his Facebook funnels, like his Cindy Joseph Boom makeup funnels. He's selling $75,000 a day of these makeup brushes, right? And Ezra's, they should be hung in a museum. They were a work of art because, if this happened, then this happened. But if this happened over here, then this happened instead. And then it went to this thing, and it went to that thing, and it went to this thing, and it went to that thing. It was 29 steps if it was one step. It was a lot, right? And that is because Ezra started simple, built out, and built out. So if we can throw the postcard back on the screen here, I want to show you what we did, because we started simple. When this person would get this postcard in the mail and they don't know me from Adam, they would go to a page that looked like this. This page couldn't get any uglier if it tried, right? This is the most basic page that you could ever create to build an opt-in. Now, there's a lot of psychology behind this. So this is how to start your own Amazon.com business. Enter your full name, enter your email address, and select desired date. So this is an evergreen webinar, and you might think, well, this would only work with evergreen webinars, Jason. And the answer is no. There are times we do live, there are times we do evergreen, and there are times we do one just simply because it's the only one that we have. So if you don't have an evergreen webinar, do it live. If you already have an evergreen webinar but you can't do it live, then do the evergreen webinar. Doesn't matter. Get it going, get it right. Now here's a little psychological trick for you. And this is the stuff that you can't figure out until you just go and do it and observe. When somebody would select the desired date, they would get a drop-down that looked like this. Select desired date, watch yesterday's replay now. So is that an option? We call that a false option. There is really no choice there. So a good marketer would say, or a very smart, intelligent person say, Jason, why would you put an extra step in between somebody registering and opting in? Why wouldn't you just say select yesterday? You know, why would you give them a choice? Why wouldn't you say opt in to watch yesterday's replay? Or you would say, hey, Jason, why don't you just default it to yesterday's replay? Why do you have a select desired date in there instead? Well, there's this concept called click commitment. And when somebody makes a click to select a time to show up to a webinar, they become more likely to want to show up, attend, pay attention, and then pay at the end of that webinar. So there's click commitment going on there. But the other concept is a webinar is an event. It is something to be celebrated and experienced, as we talked about yesterday. And so when we're testing initially, before we could dial it in and then go live, if we were having thousands of people hit there or do this or do that, right? We wanted to run it as automated as possible, as easy as possible. So yesterday's replay feels like something that has just happened that they can attend. And as soon as they opt in, they go straight to the webinar. And the webinar is a 25-minute webinar. That's it. It is a very short webinar. And at the end of that webinar, we sell them a $49 product. And that $49 product is a series of 4 webinars that are delivered, 1 per day, and then those sell a $997 product. And that is the funnel. And that is how traffic can be won. And that is paid traffic. Now here's the problem with everything that I just described to you. Front-end offer, back-end offer. $49 up front, $997 on the back end. So that's the first challenge. So you have to create different products. The second challenge with this is we are selling completely cold strangers. I'm showing up in somebody's mailbox. They don't even know how I got in there. They don't know who I am. They don't know nothing, right? That is the hardest sell you will ever make in your life. People drastically underestimate how much understanding who it is that's contacting you and having a relationship with them can influence the sale. So I would rather target 100 people who know me by name than target 1 million people who don't know me by name if I want to make money. And so having a relationship, or if I don't have the relationship, because most of you probably don't know who I am, but you know who AJ is. You know who WebinarJam is potentially, right? You know whoever it is that sent you here if it wasn't AJ, and so there's a transference of trust. And so we are in front of thousands of people, click of a button just like that, because of nothing I did to drive the traffic. It had everything to do with AJ, and AJ driving the traffic. But because AJ and you have some sort of relationship, a one-click relationship as I like to call it, because with one click he can connect with you, you now kind of want to listen to what I'm saying without me having to establish who I am, that big of a deal. We can just dive into content. And that for you, for most of you, is the best traffic strategy you're going to ever get, which is tapping into other people's traffic. But you can't win the right to somebody else's traffic without having something of value to put in front of them. But here's where everybody loses, because they say, well, that's so much to do, Jason. Create your webinar. If you have a webinar, even if you have no clue on who's going to see it, but you show this to somebody who has an audience that you know you can serve, if that person has half a brain cell, they'll say, whoa, I can see how there's some opportunity here. And so this is you be in the main event before we go to sell the tickets for them to show up. This is you creating the bait to go to the expert angler who knows exactly where to fish to catch that fish, who has their own private pond or lake that most people can't get access to. So when you fish it, you're the only one fishing it at that point in time. That is traffic. And really, that is the heart of everything that we're going to talk about here today. So AJ, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you mentioned earlier, and I think most people would be able to easily relate to like what's known as the Oprah effect, or what's commonly becoming popular as the Joe Rogan effect, right? And essentially it's that, if you have someone who's already an authority, or you already have a relationship with them, and they sit down with or recommend somebody else, there's an immediate trust factor there. And it's funny because when I go back and look at a lot of my purchases of courses or going to events or seminars, very rarely has it been because I sat and read the entire sales page or sat through a 2-3 hour webinar and had no idea who they were before I got there. Typically, it's because someone has said to me, hey, you should check this out. And I've then gone and seen it. I saw enough And I said, that's what I'll purchase. And it was funny, for a long time, I didn't think long sales pages were necessary because I never actually read one. Someone had said, hey, this product is really good. I went there, I read the headline, I read the open, would scroll to the bottom and click buy. Now, as a marketer, as a salesperson, probably the easiest person to sell to because I appreciate the process. However, when you're looking at the majority of people like me who are easy sells, you may be too, as you're here, you're possibly a marketer or a salesperson at heart, regardless of whether you're an expert in a subject matter or not. The reality is that makes up about 5% of the population. So about 5% of the people who come will essentially be willing to buy no matter what, as long as the offer makes sense to them. The other 95% is where everything has to take place. You mentioned the process of why would you have a form like this, or why would you go through these steps? Why not just put a video on a page? Why drive traffic to anything that requires a registration? Again, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And the more steps someone has to take, the more they pre-qualify themselves. So when they do show up, they're more likely to stick around, they're more likely to watch to the end, they're more likely to purchase. That's the type of person you want. And when you know who that type of customer is, long term, you're able to start dialing it in more and more. When you get the fish, you know what the fish looks like, you know where the fish came from, now you can start to focus your efforts on that. If you're just casting into a sea of minnows, you're never going to catch the blue tuna.
No, you won't. And by the way, maybe you don't like blue tuna, so maybe you want to catch salmon instead. So there's enough for everybody. Now, let's talk about the sequence. And you say, Jason, where does this sequence fit into the scheme of driving traffic? And I'll tell you exactly where the sequence fits in. This is the destination you'll send your traffic to. So the best traffic you can ever have is either your own traffic, your own audience, or somebody else's audience. The best webinar you can run to those audiences, whether they're your own or somebody else's, is live webinars. There is nothing that will convert better than a live webinar. Yes, the trade-off is it has to be done live, but it also makes a ton of money. And so this is the mailing sequence. And pay very careful attention to this, because even though this looks like conversion, this is actually where you get the most amount of traffic. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is that they don't make any money off their webinar replays. The difference between us and most other marketers is we usually make more money off our webinar replays than we do off the webinar itself. And by the way, the more effective a webinar is, the easier it is for you to get traffic. So you got to think about it from this perspective. If I control an email list, or I control a big following like a Facebook group or an Instagram following online, I want to monetize that if I'm in the business of using my web properties to make money, which is millions of people that exist out there. And if I want to monetize that, I could promote my own stuff, and maybe I make money, maybe I don't. I could promote somebody else, and maybe I make money, or maybe I don't. Or I could promote you. And if I believe promoting you will make me more money than promoting the next person, then I'm willing to take that chance. And so this is the model that you would want to work with on a partner to maximize their revenue. So that way they say, I want to promote you as opposed to somebody else because you'll make me more money than somebody else. And by the way, digital marketing is not that different than high school. There's cliques that run together, there's the cool kids, there's the popular kids, there's the jocks, there's the nerds, and everybody is influenced by everybody else. I have worked with billionaires, and they're just as susceptible to social pressure and social proof as my 9-year-old daughter is, okay? And so the idea here is if it works really good for one person, they can't help but tell about it to other people. It will show up in one of two forms. It will show up in, oh my God, I just made all this money, look at me, beat their chest, and that other person says, ooh, I want to make money too, so I'm going to do what they did. Or it'll show up in another form, hey, you got to promote this person because look how well they did for me, because then they feel good about helping their friends out. So this is not different than high school. Once you understand this fact, your ability to make money and drive traffic exponentializes. When you say, oh, this isn't some big fancy guru, this is just a high school kid, and we can make this work. So if we can go back to the schedule here, let me break down the schedule. The webinar is going to appear on day 3 of your promotion. So say you start the promotion cycle on a Monday. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning, you are going to be sending email, either you or your partner, if they have the traffic, to a registration page. And so the email copy is basically going to say, hey, we're doing this live event. You should come to it. Here's what you're going to discover. Here's what you're going to be able to do after the end of this live event. Go here to get registered. So that's day 1. Day 2 is a version of that. Day 3 occurs 1 hour before the webinar goes live. So if the webinar is going live at 11 a.m., at 10 o'clock says, hurry up, you got to join us in about 59 minutes. We're kicking off. It might even be sooner depending on when you're reading this email. Come on, show up live, go here. By the way, that last email will get you more registrants than anybody. So that's your day 3. Here's where it gets really fun. On that webinar, you should make your offer, just like we talked about yesterday. The scarcity, the special offer, expires 4 days into the future. So if you make your webinar offer on Wednesday, it's going to expire not Thursday, not Friday, not Saturday, but Sunday. So that's when your special offer kicks in. And then on day 4, they send an email, or you send an email to your audience that says, hey, listen, limited time replay. Limited time replay. Watch this amazing webinar. Yes, we discussed this, and this is where everybody went wild, and this was a really huge, powerful insight on this, this, and this. Go here and watch it. So now we focus the shift from go to register for this webinar that's about to happen to on day 4, right after the webinar is done, to say, check out what just happened. And that's your first email, right? Now, here's what's really amazing about this. Back in 2009, I think it was, I had this idea. Now, it was 2011. I remember this because this is right before I started the company with my partner, Wilson Matos, my business partner. And we had made this suggestion. I suggested to him, I didn't know how to do this technically speaking. Now it's really easy. But back then I said, let's make the free webinar expire the same time the special offer expires. Because my theory was, by putting scarcity on the free webinar, people were more likely to consume it. And if they were more likely to consume my free webinar, then more of them would see the offer at the end, and more of them could potentially purchase this, right? So we roll out there with this new strategy like a kid with a new bike. And immediately we were met with ridicule. All these other marketers, most of them more famous and more successful than us at the time, thought we were the stupidest people alive. Because they would point to things and say, I have this free webinar that exists out here, and 6 months later, somebody finds it, stumbles across it, and purchases from it. Why would you want to deprive anybody of the opportunity to give you money? And I thought, interesting. Okay, well, that's your prerogative, but let me see if it's best by test. Let me prove if I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'll fix it and change it, but if I'm right, I will cash in a lot more than I would otherwise. So here's what turns out. Turns out I was right. Turns out I was very right. And nowadays, it's practically an industry standard by anybody who pays attention that we expire the replay at the same time that we expire the special offer. And you say, well, why would you expire something that's free, Jason? Because it doesn't matter if it's free or not. If nobody pays attention to it, you can't make the sale. Now, let me take it a step further. If you're really sophisticated, do this. Let's say it's an hour-and-a-half long webinar. And let's say the first call to action you make, because you were watching my offer yesterday and you say multiple calls to action, got that, Jason, whatever. Let's say that's 59 minutes and 22 seconds in. So when we send people to a webinar replay page, we don't show a button where they can click add to cart until 59 minutes and 22 seconds in. And you say, Jason, you are insane. Maybe. But I know that more often than not, and by the way, it's not always this way, but we always start this way. We delay the add to cart button for the same reason you don't want to spill your candy in the lobby before you get into the movie theater. We give them value first in the webinar, and then we reveal an offer. Okay? So here's what's cool about this. Day 4, it's all about the presentation. Go watch this webinar replay. It's about to expire in a couple of days. You're going to learn this, this, and this. You're going to cover this, this, and this. Day 5, it is 75%. This presentation also hit this. It also hit this. It hit this. And oh, by the way, at the end of the presentation, we make a special offer. Don't be scared to let people know you're selling them something, because you're doing them a favor if you have the really good deal like we talked about yesterday. And day 6, we send 2 emails, one in the AM, one in the PM. The AM email is 50-50. 50% about the presentation, you should watch this in the presentation, and then 50% of it is check out this offer, it's crazy, it's incredible, it's amazing. And then in the PM, it is basically, hey, listen, I don't know if you can even watch the webinar, just skip to the end to see what the offer is about, buy it, and then if there's time left, go back and watch the replay. At this point in time, we've defaulted the add to cart button because nobody's surprised that we're selling something or anything like that, but we've created a story. We've created an experience. We have created something where they can be interactive with us in real time. If you master that one promotional approach that is on this screen right now with a live webinar, you will unlock as much traffic as you need to hit your financial goals, because you will be able to promote to your own audience with this model and do better and serve them better than you could any other way that I know of off the top of my head, without massive customization of spending days analyzing your business and fine-tuning things, right? But you can also make affiliates more money or partners more money, which gets you more partners. And by the way, then you can go to cold traffic.
And before you get overwhelmed, don't worry about the tech for this. We'll show you how to do that tomorrow in the easiest way possible. There's a couple questions that have come in around lists, like where do I get my list? How do I build a list? We're going to go through what we believe is one of the best strategies, but just in general, when it comes to leveraging other people's lists, typically they would be the one promoting you. They wouldn't give you their list and you would upload them somewhere and have to mail them. There is list rental available, but with the laws that are out there, you would have to add them to a platform like Facebook and then advertise to them. So most of when we talk about if you don't have your own list, yesterday we were talking about social media. If you have social media platforms or something like that, when we talk about email list, if you don't have an email list but you have an audience, maybe they're not on an email list and you haven't gotten them onto an email list yet, you can go to that audience, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Snapchat, whether it's on all of them, and you can drive them to your webinar using the exact same promotional strategy. Of course, it'd be better to put them on a list first so you can have direct communication with them, and again, because it's what they're more interested in. But if you're currently using any of those platforms or any other form of media to build an audience, it's an audience. So an email list really is the audience. We mentioned this yesterday, email lists are one of the best ways to communicate with that audience in a direct manner, because if they want to hear from you, they're going to open the email. And people would argue, oh, we only get 20% people who open. Well, that's 20% who want to listen to you. Yeah. On social media, you don't get that. When you make a post on Facebook, Facebook algorithm decides who it's going to show it to. So someone may want to hear from you, and they may not see the post based on the algorithm and what Facebook's determined they like to see in their news feed. So that's why things get a little tricky. That's why we recommend email. But if you're listening and you go, well, I don't have a list, you don't need a list if you have someone else who has a list. Yeah. Or if you already have an audience somewhere else, put this same promotional schedule in place. Day 1, day 2, day 3, and you'll see the success. And again, tomorrow we'll go over how to get into actually delivering this in terms of the tech, so you're not overwhelmed, you're not worried. We'll walk you through that step by step and you'll be good to go. We'll show you the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, and we have more presents for you, because I'm going to show you a way, because if you say, Jason, I don't have anything worthwhile, I'm still not convinced I'm a thought leader or I'm somebody else should listen to on a webinar, I'm going to have to learn that kind of stuff to get to that point to have that credibility. Well, I got a solution for you. And then you say, well, I also, Jason, I don't have anybody I feel would trust their audience in my hands by promoting me or sending an email to their list or blasting out on their social media platforms, hey, go check this out, that kind of stuff, right? I got you covered there as well. But what we like to do first is show you what the end result looks like before we give you the puzzle pieces. Ever try to put a puzzle together without looking at the box first? So I'm giving you the box view of this is the ultimate aim of what we're going to achieve and go after, and then we're going to go puzzle pieces. So I don't care where you're at, who you are, what you can and can't do. I am 100% confident by the time this session is over with, you will have enough to get going, to get traffic. And 1,000 true fans. Google that and read that article. Most of us can make millions of dollars if we just have 1,000 true fans. We don't need a lot of traffic. We need the right traffic attracted in the right way. So this leads me to the next thing here. The easiest way to get traffic is through massive customization. The more specific you can focus your webinar material on a certain group, the better you will convert. So if I'm trying to get your attention in a crowded audience and I yell, hey you, guess who is going to look? Everybody and nobody. Nobody's going to really say, huh, what? If I say, hey you in the red shirt, maybe all the people in the red shirt will look. But if I say, hey AJ Roberts. Only AJ Roberts is going to look. I have the right message to get the attention of that audience. Getting attention is the hardest thing you can ever do to get traffic online, is just to get them to acknowledge you even exist. And so the easiest way, there are two primary ways people get attention. The first way is they just shotgun approach, blast it out there, and if you have big budgets, or if you can afford to pay a lot to get a customer, that's not a bad approach, okay? But the better approach is the sniper approach. It's the approach all of us marketers take. Because, you know, there are 7 billion people on the planet and 6.9 billion people have no interest in ever learning out how to do a webinar. So we don't target them. We target people very specifically who do, and we customize material to call them out by name. So while everybody else is surrounding them in a circle screaming at them, hey you, hey you, hey you, we're whispering their name. And they say, huh? Who, me? Yeah, I'll take a look at that. So let me give you an example, okay? I'm going to show you a webinar, same webinar that we ran through the postcard, by the way. So the postcard went to the $49 offer, which was this webinar, essentially, which then sold them the $9.97 thing. So this webinar was to digital marketers, to our list and to other affiliates in the digital space. Back in 2015, we were running this webinar on how to do Amazon traffic, announcing a new opportunity backed by a legal guarantee of profit. That's the hook, that's the angle we went after the digital marketing crowd, and our copy reflected that in the webinar registration. Now, we also promoted this to options traders, because my theory was options traders like to make money. They look at it as investing, not building businesses, but they want to spend a little money to make a lot of money, so let's target them. So we did, but we didn't use the same copy. We didn't use the same bait. So we said weird but highly predictable special situation, ideally for traders. And we wrote this in the voice of the third-party person, a guy named John F. Carter, who's one of the most trusted real options traders in the game. We wrote it in his voice to his audience, so we customized it top down. And then we went to another guy, my friend Garrett Gunderson, who teaches entrepreneurs finance. And we wrote a different registration page, the single greatest new economy first generation wealth vehicle, and we talked about that. Now, all of these are essentially the same exact webinar selling the same exact offer at the end. Even the webinar itself is slightly customized, but the bait that we're using to capture these audiences, 3 different distinct audiences with 3 different distinct influencers over those audiences get 3 different distinct landing pages. So all traffic works if you can get it at the right price. All advertising works if the price is right. If I could get a free plane with free gas, because, like, you know, some guy one day says, I'm just going to give you my plane for free and I'll just fill it up with gas. And then somebody else says, you know what, listen, I will open up Kinko's for you and allow you to freely print as much as you want for as long as you want until the day's over with. And I take all that printed material that I get for free, load it up in a plane, we fly across America, throw in these, you know, one-pagers out the window of the plane and out, you know, dumping them on America. That advertising would work, because it cost me $0 to do it. So if I make one sale, I have a positive ROI. So all advertising works at the right price. All paid traffic works at the right price. I would play the lottery every day if I could buy lottery tickets for a penny, because then I would make more money than I spent. So the way that we make traffic work at the best price possible is not by paying less for traffic necessarily, and oftentimes we pay more for traffic. That's actually how we make it profitable. What we make it work is by being the only one speaking to that audience in that way, and then therefore we are attracting the highest valued people in that audiences with the least amount of noise around us, and that's how we make paid advertising work, or that's how we make any advertising work. That's how we make audiences work from other people's lists, because we say, hey, listen, don't just promote my promotion. We say, hey, let me customize my material specifically for your audience. And what do they have to risk? Nothing. What do they have to gain? Anything. And so they're willing to take a shot more often than not. And this works in every single market that I've ever done. But if you try to take the, hey, let's treat everybody equally and the same, let's put the same thing in front of every single audience, it's not going to work. That's the #1 problem people will have with traffic, is they think that they can use the same bait, and no matter where they fish and no matter what they fish for, they expect to catch every fish with one piece of bait no matter where they go. And you've already lost the game before you played. And here's why people lose. Here's why you will no longer lose and why you can laugh at other people who are losing who miss out on this principle. Because you are willing to customize to go after smaller pockets who have large amounts of money to spend. And they're thinking, well, that's too much work. I just want to create one page. You will actually work less and be more effective. And then, again, if it works on a smaller audience, you can slightly widen the circle, slightly widen the circle. But that's the biggest traffic secret that I could ever give to you. When you're speaking Spanish and everybody else is speaking English, I don't care how good your message is, I don't care how good your offer is, I don't care how cheap you can get Facebook clicks. You are going to lose. But if you are speaking the language that is inside their mind, that nobody else hears besides you, and they're saying, wow, you're reading my thoughts, this is made specifically for me, then you win. A lot of things you can charge 5 times the price if you just put the person's name on the outer cover of the book.
Absolutely. You know, everybody thinks they're a unique snowflake. There's no doubt about it. We're told by our parents from when we're young that we're special, and we believe it, and rightfully so. We are all unique, and we are all different. And the reality is that each industry has their own language that they speak, and if you can speak that language, you become part of the insider club. There's nothing worse than someone calling, you know, I can help you get more clients, when in fact it's patience they need, right? And so when you can customize your message to that audience, it immediately connects with them. And yesterday we talked about conscious versus subconscious level. Really what we're trying to do is get people to lower their barrier. And the way they do that is when you're not a stranger anymore, you're a welcome guest in their community. That's what makes the difference. It's also what opens up the doors for you with partners, because they feel like you actually understand and care about the audience, and you bring massive value. You know, one of the best stories, you know, legendary Frank Kern, you know, Dr. Frank Kern, chief NASA operator. One of the ways he early on had massive success online was he had a dog training product, but he didn't sell it as a dog training product. What he did was he took that one product and he made it the pit bull training, pit bull training. He made it the golden retriever training, the Rottweiler training, the bull mastiff training. He had a ebook for every single one of those pets. The reason is every pet owner believes that their dog is very, very special. Right? It's, you know, we spend a fortune on our pets. And nobody wants a dog training manual. They want a manual that's specific for their pet, right? And he realized that early on, and that was before webinars or anything like that. And that's what he had massive success doing. The information doesn't have to change. You know, getting traffic on Facebook is the same regardless of what business you're in. What's different is the message that you put in. The fundamentals are the same. And when you understand that, it opens up the doors for you with partners. It opens up the doors for you with industries. There is a difference between what someone in the solar industry will pay for a lead than what someone in the massage industry will pay, because the customer value is so much greater. And so when you understand that the information you have is powerful, and that the person in front of you doesn't have to be the industry or the specific niche that you started in, it can be applied in different places, it allows you to expand in different spaces. Or you can go very deep in that space you're in, and you can target people who also serve those clients but may not deliver what it is you deliver. So all we're trying to do is get you to look at things from a different perspective so you can see the possibilities when it comes to traffic. Because one of the things a lot of people will say is, I tried that, it didn't work. Maybe not to that audience, but did you try it to a different audience? And that gives you, it's not necessarily the offer or the product that's broken. It may be the audience that you're putting in front of. As we mentioned yesterday, people aren't looking for injury prevention, but they sure as heck are looking for injury solutions once they're hurt. And so again, it's just shifting perspective and maybe looking at things differently. For those of you that have already, you know, sitting there go, well, I've already tried that, it didn't work. Okay, but have you tried it to multiple industries or multiple audiences?
Yeah, and by the way, I forget very quickly what doesn't work when I find something that does work. So just, you know, spoiler alert here, for everything I've done right, I've done a million things wrong. But I stop the things I do wrong very quickly and adjust slightly and try it again, and try it again, and try it again, and try it again. And I won't ever sell you a course if that's my hook. Hey, run into the wall enough times and eventually it will fall over. But That's the real world, and if I'm going to be of service to you, our goal is to accelerate our losses as quickly as possible with as little pain as possible so we can then back our wins, all right? Here is a winner for you. This is the virtual summit. So this is the hack, okay? Vision, strategy, tactics. I teach you all of them. I gave you the vision today. We gave you a high-level strategy. Let me give you a tactic, okay? This is stuff that can make you money right away. My only ask is if you do make money, just come back and spend some of it with us, right? So this is a virtual summit. So this is from my friend Dr. Patrick Gentempo. He runs these film series called Blank Revealed. And this one was Money Revealed. And so he had people like John Mackey, who was the creator of Whole Foods. This is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And this is what they're doing. They say, hey, register soon. We're doing this virtual summit. I don't know if that's what they call it, but there's a 9-episode world premiere online for free. Could that be a webinar? Sure. Could you call it a virtual web class? Yeah, I guess, master class, whatever you want to call it, right? It's video streamed online, so I call it a webinar, right? So here's the hack, though. Dr. Pat is not the expert. He is interviewing an expert. There are 36 experts. Watch 36 self-made millionaires and billionaires tell all. This is the power of a virtual summit. Let me break it down for you, okay? So I'm on this virtual summit. And here's the hook. The hook is if you opt in here, you can get all the episodes for free. So in this case, they pre-recorded them, and they're releasing them one at a time over a certain period of time. There are other models in the virtual summit that we play in where it's like they're live every single day for the next 7 days. Expert 1 on day 1, Expert 2 on day 2, Expert 3 on day 3, Expert 4 on day 4. I don't care how you do it. It doesn't matter how you do it. If you blindfolded yourself and threw a dart at the wall and said, okay, that's how I'm going to do it because I just randomly selected, you would be just as well off as if you tried to figure this stuff out. So if you want to pre-record them and drip them, do it that way. If you want to do them live just in time, do them that way. If you want to do a combination of them, do it that way. What matters is the fact that we are going to get experts to give our content for us. We are going to tap into their expertise to create a series of webinars, a virtual summit, a virtual seminar, if you will, with multiple speakers over a short time frame. The scarcity is already palatable, isn't it? Because you have to show up, or this is happening for a very limited time, so you have to attend and watch this and be part of this. This is event-based marketing, which we talked about yesterday. All right? So let's jam. What happens when they opt in free to stream? Limited time, each interview is available online. So when they interviewed me, and this is just to give you a little bit of the dirt behind the scenes, because people think like guys like me, we have it together, me and AJ, like we don't have shit together, okay? Pardon my language, right? We're just as much of a train wreck as anybody on this call. And so in this particular case, I was interviewed because I was at Traffic and Conversion Summit last year, and I spoke at the event, and his film editor, my friend Jeff Hayes, was there, and Jeff says, we want to interview you for Money Revealed. And I said, oh, okay, right? And they said, we rented an Airbnb somewhere close to the place that we're at. Come here at this time. My wife and I go down there to get interviewed. I'm actually wearing the same shirt I'm wearing today, and you might notice the strobe effect I have on today. So I've made this mistake now multiple times being on camera.
It's very hypnotic.
Yeah, it is. That's a sales technique, right? So they said, well, we need to put a sweater over you because we're professional filmographers here. We need to have one, so we pulled something out of the guy's closet that we were Airbnb-ing on. I'm not making this up, right? Jeff interviewed me, asked me the questions, and then in post-production, they had Pat come in and ask the same questions, and they edited it that way, okay? That's the real world for you. People think this is all figured out like a chess game and we're thinking 27 moves ahead. Not the case. I'm thinking, how do I find the nearest Starbucks because I'm tired and I'm cranky and daddy needs his caffeine. That's more of how the real world works. We get it out there and we see what happens, okay? So anyway, I digress. We're doing this interview. We show up. We cut some film. It was great. It was about 30, 40 minutes. They interviewed me, and now I'm part of this series. Now, here is how everybody wins. This is the key here, right? Couple ways. First way that this wins is the way that Pat monetizes this is he bundles all these up and say, hey, you can watch each of these on demand for a very limited time, or you can watch these and stream these live for a very limited time. But if you'd like to buy them to have them forever and maybe throw in some other perks, such as other interviews, such as transcripts, such as bonuses, such as this and that, then you can buy this. But you have to buy this soon. So he makes money directly. So he's interviewed all these experts, and here's how he's monetizing our expertise. I win because on the back of this interview, I sold $15,000 worth of product because people looked me up when it was over based on the subject I was talking about. They went and they Googled me, they found my product, and they bought my product. But here's the other way that we all win, and this is the most powerful thing. So this is you. You're working hard behind, it's early 3 a.m. in the morning. You're funnel hacking away to try to build your online legacy, and you're struggling, and you're banging your head against the wall. But lo and behold, you just know the strategy I'm going to teach you. You're reaching out to influencers. But you're not just reaching out to any influencers. You're reaching out to influencers with followings. Okay? So this one guy might be a subject matter expert, but nobody's ever heard of him besides you, and he might be the very best in the world. I would not have that person on my virtual summit. Why? Because they don't have an email list. You say, Jason, that's very shrewd of you. Yes, it is. We're not in the business of just being nice. We're also in the business of being profitable, too. And so we will only want to invite influencers to our virtual events if they have following. Now, not all followings are created equal. Email list reigns supreme. Give me a person with 1,000 buyers on an email list over somebody with 10 million Facebook followers any day of the week. That is so powerful, I'm going to say it again. If I have to choose between promoting 2 people or having 2 people promote me, person A, we'll call him John. John has 1,000 people who have paid him $17. That's his entirety of his following, and they're all on an email list. Okay? Person B, we'll call him Jim, has 10 million followers on Facebook because he posts these fancy inspirational messages with mountains behind them and all sorts of feel-good stuff. But I don't know if anybody's bought from him or not, and they probably haven't. If I could only have one of those 2 people promote me, John or Jim, John with 1,000 little tiny buyers, or Jim with all these millions of people who have followed him on Facebook, I will pick the guy with 1,000 buyers any day of the week. Quality, not quantity, okay? So we want influencers ideally with email lists. If they don't have email lists, we will settle for everything else, but let's start with email lists. So these influencers, we get 6 of them, we get 8 of them, we get 14 of them, we get 27 of them, we get 42 of them. I don't care. I want to get as many of them. I want to herd all these cats up, because it will be cat herding, just to be clear here, into a pen for a limited time, as many as possible, with the caveat that all of them have to have a following, and it is required that they let their following know about this virtual event that they're going to be part of. You dig? Yeah, that's hardcore, isn't it? Well, this is a hardcore business. You are in the business of changing lives. You're not in the business of, walking around being all, dainty and quiet and kind and, you're in the business of making a difference. And sometimes to make a difference, you got to take hard stands. You got to push it. You got to go, baby. And this is how we go. And so we get these audiences from other people. Now, everybody benefits, okay? So if I'm part of a 14-person sequence, and I know that 13 other people are promoting, I'm okay with promoting because I put in 1/14 of the audience and I get out 13/14. What a wonderful concept. So I'm actually more geared up to be your expert person that you're going to interview if you put one of these together, because I know I'm going to get a huge following out of it. I'm going to get more out than I put in. You're geared up to host me and interview me because you're the one capturing all 14 of the followers, all 14 influencers and their followings. You're putting them now on your email list. You're not sharing that email list. You're not burning it when it's done. That is yours for as long as you wish it to be. So that is your following, okay? And then here's what's really cool about this. This becomes your webinar series. So day 1, we release this in the AM, we release this in the PM. Day 2, this is AM, this is PM. Day 3, this is AM, this is PM. Whatever you want to do, it doesn't really matter, okay? But when it's done, here's what happens. You have money because you sold the on-demand access, or you sold whatever you wanted to sell there, and you have an email list. And guess what you should do with that email list? I'm going to run it back for you real quick here. This is what you should do with this email list. Boom, right there. As soon as the dust clears, as soon as the smoke is out of the way, everything's settled, you circle back around. Because if they came to you via webinars, the best way you can serve them is with another webinar, and you run this cycle. So AJ, is this theoretical?
No, it's theoretical and it's been proven. So one of the things I wanted to share, I was talking with Jason, and yesterday I shared this story. He asked me my origin story, and I shared him about how the first product I created. I went to an event, and I was sitting in the audience at an event, and someone had talked about creating a virtual interview series. And at the time, webinars weren't around. This was in the very beginning of like online sales. So, most people putting up a one-page website cost $20,000 to get the person to build the website. There was no WordPress at this time. And so I went to this event, and it was a strength and conditioning event, and I got the idea to do a interrogation series. So what I did was there was 20 speakers. I reached out to all 20 of them. 14 said they would participate. I got no's from 6, and after that, once I became one of their peers, I ribbed all of them for it. However, I understood not everybody is going to say yes. Not everybody is willing to give up their time. So 14 said yes out of the 20. I interviewed them, and back then I can't even remember how I did the interview, but I remember I had to use like Audio Acrobat to put the file online, right? So it was like HTML upload, and then you had this button that you would give, and I sold the product through ClickBank at the time. But the point of that story is that all I did was reach out to them. There was no special template or thing that I should say. But because I had attended the event, I said, okay, what is going to be the most likelihood that they would respond to me? Well, first of all, let's acknowledge that I appreciated their presentation at the event. Let's acknowledge the fact that these are the things I took away. And let's say, I have this idea, and here's why I would like to interview you. And what I did was I made them specific, each person speak about a specific topic, so that they weren't all speaking about just general strength and conditioning. So I had the mobility expert, I had the stretching expert, I had the free weight expert, I had the recovery expert. So that way they had a theme to talk about, and that the product came together very succinct. And then when it was ready, they promoted. And of course, I gave them an affiliate commission to promote, which excited them. But more so, it was about, for them, it was about, like Jason said, being involved in this with the other experts. However, looking at what we've shared, one of the things you may be thinking is, well, what if I had an anchor? What if I had someone, or what if I don't know anybody, right? What if I listen to them? There's a great website called clarity.fm, and Clarity allows you to pay for a phone call with experts. So you can find your experts, and you can pay to have a phone call with them. Now, if I was an expert I'm not set up on Clarity, but if I was, and someone paid to have time with me, and then they said, hey, I'm a huge fan. I've listened to your podcast here, and this is what I got out of it. I'm putting this thing together. I wanted to know if you would be involved. There's a high likelihood that I would say yes, as long as I didn't have any other projects going on that would interfere with that. But there's a good chance that I'm going to agree to something like that, because I appreciate the effort that someone's gone to. But not everybody is, but a lot of people will. And so one of the things you have to be when you do this, if anything, is determined, right? It's determined. If you don't get a response from someone, don't assume that they got your email. Follow up, right? Follow up until they say, hey, please don't contact me. And there's so many experts out there who have those stories where they went knocking on the door after door, or they sent email after email, or they phoned, dialed every single day. Persistence and determination are key here. So if you're trying to do this and you have certain people you want to reach, don't stop until they give you a no, right? And you may think, oh, okay, well, how good is that strategy? And aren't I going to annoy a lot of people? You know who used that strategy very, very well and is very, very famous today? Tim Ferriss. That was his strategy. And he went to every top blogger there was in the industry, and he put a dinner together, and they spoke at South by Southwest. He walked up to them and said, hey, there's a speaker dinner tonight you should come to. They all showed up at this speaker dinner. Well, lo and behold, he was the one hosting the speaker dinner. It wasn't put on by Southwest, but it got him in the door. Now, a few people were upset by it, but a whole bunch of people weren't, and it led to the 4-hour work week becoming a bestseller, and has gone on, he's been able to go on and have massive success. So if this is sounding to you like it's a little bit overwhelming, overwhelming or there's a lot to do, we understand. But when you're starting without a list, when you don't have an audience, there's nothing like leveraging someone else's audience. And the thing is they have these audiences and they want to provide quality content to them. And when you put on a summit or a virtual event like this, oftentimes the content that is delivered is of quality that they're willing to share with their audience. One of the things when you're choosing your audience, Jason said you want to make sure they're an influencer, you want to make sure that they have an audience, is get on their email list before you send them a message and see what type of emails and communication they have with their list. If they're not promoting anything, if the audience isn't used to getting offers, they're not going to be a great guest for you. They may be a great interview and you may get great content. And there's nothing wrong if you have those people, but just understand that they're not going to participate.
Right.
But if it's worth having that person because they're a whale or a shark, as some people, they're a ringer, and it's going to get other people to jump in because they want to be associated with that celebrity. We're celebrities in our own little world. But if it's going to help in that sense, it makes total sense. But don't put, don't land, someone who is absolutely huge, who never promotes anybody, and expect them to promote you. Especially if you're coming without an audience and they have an absolutely huge audience. It's better to kind of work with people who are smaller and start building it up. And there's nothing that says you have to do just one virtual summit.
Yep.
If you can only get 6 experts to start with 6 experts. And then do it again and again. Make it a biannual thing. Make it a bi-monthly thing. Whatever it takes in order to build the business. It's about persistency and it's about your determination. That's going to come down. That's what is going to determine your success.
Yeah. Bottom line is this: the audience that you're perfectly suited for to serve and get in front of, somebody already has that audience. And instead of trying to get audiences one person at a time until you get to 10,000, trying to sell them one at a time, you just got to sell one person to give you the keys to unlock the door that leads to those audiences. And I don't know about you, I like to sell the one person that can influence the 10,000 people as opposed to sell the 10,000 people individually. Now, at the end of the day, we end up doing both. But I like to run both in tandem with each other and see which one wins first. And yes, I have been part of a product with John Mackey. That makes me feel good. I could put that on a resume if this doesn't work out and I got to go back to the real world and work a real job, right? And so it was cool because they could market it and say, this is a billionaire and this is that and this is this. And of course, John Mackey's not going to promote or do any of that stuff, but that allows them to get talent because they say, hey, would you like to be part of a product with John Mackey? The guy that kind of created this small little mom and pop grocery store called Whole Foods. And they say, I'm in. And oh, by the way, now they're bragging. You don't have to tell them to promote. They're bragging. I'm in a product with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm in a product with John Mackey. I'm in a product with whatever, right? That's the game. And if you want to accelerate your expertise in your own celebrity status, make one of the experts in the 7-day series you. Guess what? You could put yourself in the prime spot. You could put yourself and position yourself exactly how you want to. So you can also be one of these experts as well. And the big wow factor is you're alongside everybody else, so you must kind of be a big deal. Now, that doesn't have to be true. Hopefully it is true. But that's just how the world works. That's how people make decisions. So that's a great way to get traffic. I know so many people, that is purely their business model. So let's go back to the virtual summit. So we ran through that. And I want to now talk to you about some of the other aspects of marketing your webinar. The easiest webinar pitch is a free webinar that invites your own audience to a series of future paid webinars. So when you do have an audience, so let's just say you have acquired your audience now, and you did this through a virtual summit, or you did this even with one person. I can't tell you how many times I go to somebody and say, listen, I'll do all the work, but let's split the profits. By the way, talk about the greatest sales pitch you could ever do. I'm going to do all the work, but we're going to split all the profits. Are you in? They say, tell me more, okay? And they say, here's how this works. You have your audience. Your audience is primed for this type of information. I will create the product for you. I will create the marketing for the product. I will create the fulfillment for the product. I will do this, 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 and this. And all you got to do is show up, look pretty, and send your audience to this thing that we're collaborating on together. So I created a product with Joe Polish, a good friend of mine, branded it under his company, gave him co-credit on everything. And I created the whole thing. But he already had the audience. And he didn't have a big audience, by the way. But we only needed 63 people, because that was how many spaces we had to fill at a live event to sell a $5,000 training. So I don't know what that is, but 5,000 times 63 equals a lot of money. And then we took that recording and then I packaged it up and sold it as its own product, right? And so you can do it with an audience of one. I do all the work, we split the money. But however you get your audience, when you have that audience, now you can make the real money, because no audience will pay you better than your own audience. Give me an audience of my own 100 customers, and I will do more with that than an audience of somebody else's 10,000 customers, because the tightest relationship you will ever have. You know, everybody thinks their kids look cute, right? There's ugly babies out there. I hate to break it to you. There's a couple ugly babies that exist in the world, but not to their parents, right? So that's your relationship with your audience, is you are not an ugly baby to your audience. You're cute. You have that kind of connection with that audience. That's what you want, okay? You have your audience. Here's the best offer you could ever make. It's the offer that doesn't exist. You say, whoa, that sounds kind of cool, Jason. Yeah, I'm going to show you how to get paid to create, which is the best way to then leverage that asset to go out and attract more traffic, like the traffic you just served that you got paid to create. So if we get 100 customers or 50 customers or even 20 customers, this makes the deal work really well. Here's what you do. You invite them to a free webinar. They show up. You train for 45 to 60 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever you want to do. And now here's your pitch, essentially. It starts with this. You first ask, hey, did you enjoy our time here today together? They say yes. You say, would you like to do this again? Of course I would, right? Now here's the challenge we face today. It's hard to totally change your life related to this topic with one measly webinar done one time for 1 hour. If we want to create everlasting true change, we need to do this more than one off. Would you agree with that? Of course I would agree with that. So here's what I've cooked up for you. Over the next X number of weeks, on Tuesday at 11 a.m. for the next 8 Tuesdays, we're going to get together and we're going to go deeper into everything I discussed with you today. And you got a lot of value out of today, didn't you? Of course I did. So here's what this looks like. Boom. Week 1, this. Boom. Week 2, this. Boom. Week 3, this. Boom. Week 4, this. So I'm going to invite you. You can come Tuesday. We'll jam together. If you miss it or if you want the recordings, that's fine. I got you covered, because not only can you show up live, we record this, we capture this, we put this in a members area, and then you can have access to the training in the members area as well. So you get the best of both worlds. You get this recorded for you, and you can attend live if you wish to. Are you in? You will convert like crazy, but here's the best news of all. That product doesn't exist yet. You shouldn't have it exist yet, right? So we call these E-classes, by the way. That's just a name I made up. Here's why you should not create the product. So the first time I ever did this, I said I had a 12-step copywriting technique. So if you wanted to write long-form sales letters, and this is back in 2009, I had 12 steps. So in my infinite wisdom, I now know better, I said 1 step per week for the next 12 weeks. 12 weeks is a lot of weeks, but whatever, it doesn't matter. I made a lot of money. Week number 1 was step number 1. I thought by week number 2, I could just jump into step number 2. Turns out my audience was still stuck on step number 1, so I made an adjustment to my training from week 1 to week 2. I had 14 people that paid for this training. That's it. But those 14 people completely changed my life and ended up making me multiple millions of dollars because they discovered the secret. I went back and adjusted from week 1 to week 2 what I had planned on training, went back to that same audience, slightly fine-tuned and customized that. Week 3, same thing. So here's what happened when I was done. The product was easier to create than any product I'd ever created in my life. That product I sold at a higher price than I had sold any product in my life. That product was better than any product at that time I'd ever created in my life, because far be it to know what the best thing is to put in front of my audience. Wouldn't you agree that it's much easier to have them show me what is best and then me make the adjustments to serve them instead of trying to force them to follow what I think is best? So you get a better result, it's easier, it's more profitable, and now you know all your hooks. Now you know the things that made their heart beat fast. Now you know the things that they struggled with or got excited about. That's what you start advertising to other people's audiences. That's what you start advertising to paid traffic.
Hold on 1 sec. Looks like we're having a little technical difficulty. Let's see what we need to do. Is it still live? Everybody's still here.
Tell them we're just going to check it for a second.
All righty.
All right, I guess we're going to check something here for a second. I got a little too crazy, too much power.
We're back up.
We're back up?
All right. I think, so let's just back up a minute.
Oh my God, yeah, okay.
So you were sharing that you're sharing how sell the course as a series of webinars. And the first time you did this with your copy course, you had 12 weeks.
Yep.
So you can just go back and share
Absolutely.
why that was a beneficial process and how it worked for you.
So here's what I thought would have made the best course, right? I'm like, one step per week over the next 12 weeks. So I'm going to teach them step 1, week 1. They're going to get that immediately, right? And then I'll teach them step 2 next week. Turns out step 1 was a 4-week process. And I didn't know that. And if I would have locked myself into a room for 12 days straight creating product, I would have had this finished product that I could have put in front of my audience, and it would have been completely wrong. It would have not have helped them and served them, and I would have spent a lot more effort and time creating that product. What I discovered is what my audience needed the most was things that were far easier for me to teach and create than what I thought my audience needed. The pacing that my audience needed to go at to be happy and successful and satisfied was a lot slower than the pacing that I thought they had to go at. So I actually had to cover less material. It was a beautiful thing. I also discovered 12 weeks was too much. I would have had happier clients if I sold them 2 separate 6-week trainings, charged them twice as much, and they would have been happier to pay that because we put too much into it. So I learned so many lessons. This is why it's better to use a webinar to sell a series of webinars for a product that doesn't exist yet, because you are now creating it in real time alongside your audience, because it's easier to adjust to the needs of your audience and serve them than it is to somehow predict what they may or may not enjoy. And then when you're done with this product, guess what? You now know all the hooks. You now know all the angles. You know what they struggled with the most, and now you have a solution for that. You now know what they got excited about the most, and you now have a solution for that. So when I sold the Amazon stuff, here's the thing that made us more money than anybody else. I observed my customers, and while all these other marketers were talking about, here's how much money you can make, and look at these profit margins and this and that, I discovered something very interesting that didn't make sense, but it was what it was. The audiences didn't know what private label physical products meant. And most of these audiences knew what private label digital products meant. So it would be a wise assumption to assume that we don't have to define what a private label product is. So nobody did. Nobody that was promoting this Amazon course did. And we were one of many affiliates, right? I spent 8 minutes on a webinar going over what private label physical products are. I had a lot of these smart marketers come to me and say, this is stupid, Jason, get rid of this. What a waste of time. Here's some unsolicited advice for you, right? And you know what that's worth. Free advice is usually worth every penny. Turns out, though, I knew something they didn't know, because I got in front of my audience and made the same foolish assumption that they made, that everybody knew this. Turns out they didn't. It's hard to get them to step 2 through 9 when they can't get past step 1, right? So great news. You create a product easier than ever, takes you less time than ever, it's better than ever, and makes your audience happier than ever. You can make money quicker than ever with it, and it poises and sets you up to then go out and get paid traffic with it and get affiliates promoting you better than ever. And by the way, you don't have to be an expert salesperson. You can be a kindergarten level white belt first day on the job webinar pitch person. Because the easiest thing to sell on a webinar is the very thing that they just experienced, times 8. So I don't know if you caught the close earlier, but I'll run it back again. The first question you asked to somebody is you said, did you enjoy our time here together today? And if you did a halfway reasonable job like we talked about yesterday, they're going to say yes. Would you like to spend more time together? They're going to say yes. And you say, here's the problem. It's hard to create everlasting change with one measly webinar done one time for 1 hour. You need more than that. How would you like us to work together over the next 8 weeks to drill even deeper into everything that we discussed here today? Here's what it's about. Here's the best news of all. You get to attend this live with me. Now, by the way, whether you show up live or not, we record this, we put this in a members area, and it's yours. You will log in, you'll get access to it. We can put bonuses together for you, blah, blah, blah. But people will say, I like today. Today was awesome. I want more of that. It's the easiest pitch in the world, and then you get paid to create the product.
And a couple of things on that. one of the things that most people who I talk to, I'll ask what they do, and they oftentimes say, oh, I have this great idea for this product, or I have this great idea for this course or system. And the truth is because they never sell it, they never create it, right? There's no pressure to. So they're always trying to refine it, they're trying to perfect it, but they're doing that without the feedback of the user. The minute you have one sale for a 6-week course that you're going to do, via webinars, is the minute that you have to start creating your content. And you only have to do it week by week, and as Jason mentioned, you can adjust it on the fly based on the feedback. What's really cool with this is you can take the recordings and you can then sell it in the future. If you want to continue having the live component, you can add a Q&A in weekly that's still done live to go with the content. Or if you want to continue to improve the content, you can. If you want to update the slides, if you want to add a workbook, if you want to add transcription, you can continuously improve the product until you get to the point that you're happy. Now, most of you could tweak it forever, so there's got to be a point where good is good enough. However, it gives you the opportunity to go through it. Some of the most expensive products I've purchased have been these types of products where I paid for live training over a period of time. And that's the other point I wanted to bring to you. When it comes to pricing your product, what do you think someone's going to be more comfortable spending a high dollar amount on? A course that's in a membership site somewhere, they log in, they access, and they have no ability to ask you questions, no community to bond with and connect with via a chat role, or something that's delivered live by you, the expert, over a period of time. It's not only going to increase the sales, it's going to increase the consumption, and it's going to increase, hopefully, the execution of whatever you're teaching so that the person who has purchased gets results, which allows you then to get better case studies, which you then can roll into your marketing and can use to continue to build the business. So if you don't have a course right now, or even if you do have a course, it may be worth doing this where you sell live from the webinar, you sell more webinars, right? And you can position it however you want, but ultimately it's delivered, it's live in person. And we mentioned yesterday, someone who buys a $99 song on iTunes will also spend $200, $300, $400 to go watch the band live. Yep. Because it's the experience, it's the ability to be there in person, and that's what people like to buy into. So from a pricing standpoint, if you're thinking, well, how do I charge someone $1,000? That was one of the questions we had yesterday, I don't think we got to, was how do I charge someone $1,000 for a product? Well, this is how you do it. Why? Because they're spending, if it's a 6-week course, 6 to 8 weeks tends to be the ideal time in my experience. But if they're spending 6 weeks with you, or 8 weeks with you, that's 6 to 8 hours with you. How much is your time worth per hour? Right? And hopefully you don't charge hourly. That's a big mistake too, because it's about the value that you give them and the transformation. We talked a little bit yesterday about that and how to position that. But I want you to get your head around here. It's not that difficult to charge high prices when you deliver it in this format, because people expect to pay more if they're getting access to you. You pay more for access to the expert anywhere you go. It's normal, it's not unexpected, it's not going to be a sticker shock. However, if at the end of the webinar you held up something that looked like a regular book, even if that book had the exact same information that you're going to deliver over those 6 to 8 weeks, how much would you pay for the book? Probably $20 to $30, because that's what you're used to paying for that book. And if you want to see this in action, Tony Robbins' original book, Unleashing the Power Within, Unlimited Power, yep, is the exact same content that he delivers at Unleash the Power Within. Right? There's no difference. You read that book, you get the exact same content, but there's a big difference in price, because live versus a book. And that's what we're trying to get across to you. Not only is it the easiest way to create content for yourself and create products, and but it's also the easiest way to charge high prices, because the value is there, and there's no strangeness to it to the person that you're pitching the idea to.
Yeah, and you have to charge high prices. I know that sounds weird, right? Like, the best thing you can do for your clients is charge them more. Write that down. That's a good saying. But here's why. You can't find clients if you don't have profit margins, because you can't buy traffic, which is ultimately what you need to do. But here's the other issue with charging low prices, is it's hard to reach the people and give them the biggest impact when you are doing so on an empty stomach. What I mean by that is if you're so preoccupied about paying the bills, how are you going to show up ready to serve and help somebody else? So that's another reason why you need to charge higher prices. Another reason still is people tend to pay more attention the more they pay for something. If you're familiar with the placebo effect, it's a very real thing, even though it's imaginary. Because people think they're getting the better result, physiologically, their body responds to medication, even if it's just a sugar pill. So when people pay a premium for a price, they're more likely to do something with it than when they would do something if they paid next to nothing for it. They don't value it as much. But here's the most important thing of all, in my opinion, for charging a higher price. This is how we should design solutions. We shouldn't say, gee, what's the cheapest, most minimal, most thinnest, crappiest version of this we can ship out there so people don't get offended by what the price tag says, right? Instead, we should say, if I had my way and budget wasn't an issue, what is the perfect, best solution I could provide? And then when we do the math, we say, well, that would cost us $1 million to fulfill. That's when we start cutting it, eliminating, adjusting. And then we get it down, we're like, okay, it's $5,000 now, right? But guess what? Nobody does that. Instead, they try to cut corners and then create a half-done solution and charge it cheap. You go big time and you outvalue everybody else. And so people will pay a little bit more to get a lot more, the right people. The hardest thing about charging higher prices is asking people to pay them. The actual fulfillment is way easier. It's the psychological effect. But it's going to be very hard for you to show up and give everybody your all and give them every resource you have in your disposal, right? If you are not charging premium prices. What to speak of the fact of if you had the same information in a $97 book or a $1,997 course, your audience that pays you $19.97 is 10 times more likely to be successful than the audience that pays you $97, even though it's the exact same information. I'm part of two masterminds. I'm part of a $25,000 mastermind, which is cheap compared to the $100,000 mastermind I'm in. And for whatever reason, I think they're the same in terms of content. I do better at the 100,000 because I don't allow myself to screw around. Hey, 25,000, yeah, that's just monopoly money. Who cares? But 100,000, I better show up. I better sleep good the night before. I better eat healthy before I come to these events. I better have a purpose when I show up. And magically speaking, paying $75,000 more makes me a lot more money, simply because I show up more prepared. But also at the same time, there's more connections, there's a higher level of attitude, and so on and so forth. So you need to charge your customers higher prices if you want to live. And you need to encourage your competitors to charge lower prices, because for every one Walmart that exists, there are thousands of premium price luxury goods that exist on the market, okay? So I digress, though. Let me show you a little trick here. So this is a very powerful way in order to optimize for traffic. Just a little hack for you. So this is a tactic, right? So to leverage my expertise with somebody else's audience, Russell Brunson had interviewed me because I was kind of like the godfather of webinars to him, and he learned a lot from me. So we get together one day and we said, let's do a 4-hour training that doesn't exist yet. So notice the theme here, right? I get paid and then I show up and create. Most of you create and then hope to get paid. It doesn't have to be this way. So here's the easiest way to tap into his audience. So I tapped into Russell's audience, says, I'll show up, we'll do this training, we'll promote it to your audience, and then we'll split the profits. And he says, okay, good. I wrote the copy, we did this thing, but we came up with this offer structure that I think will serve you very well to get audiences. We say, here's the deal. Pay nothing today. We're going to do the webinar 2 days from now. If this webinar isn't the greatest thing you've ever experienced related to this topic, then please write to support and tell us not to charge your card on file, and we will not charge it. Only if you feel like this was the greatest training ever, then do nothing. And 3 days after the training, we will bill you $97. Cool? Yes. Cool, right? I call that the 5-day money hold. The easiest way you can get people in and experiencing your product and then paying you is to deliver results first. It's so hard for somebody to know how good a product is until after they pay for it. See, there's this concept of marketing called perception and reality. The reality is your product can be the greatest thing in the world. But if the perception is that it is no different than any other product, then your product sucks, even if it's the best product in the world. Perception is more important than reality in marketing when it comes to acquiring customers, aka when it comes to generating traffic. Without perception, there is no reality. Our goal, though, is if we have the greatest thing, which most of you, that's where you spend most of your time. You create the best product ever, and you lose because in the 6 months it takes you to create a superior product, some joker with a mediocre solution is out there making it look pretty even though it's crap. And he's winning and you're losing because he's not worried about making a better product. He's spending all his time tricking people into thinking his product is better. And you say it shouldn't be that way, Jason, and I agree with you. But here's a little thing for you. It is that way. You're out there toiling day and night to make your thing extra special, and he's just spending his time tricking people into thinking his is extra special. He's got the extra nice gift wrapped around it. He has it in glazed and embossed. I mean, tell me you haven't fell for this because I fall for this all the time. It looks really cool, right? I bet it's really good. Oh, well, I spent more time on the gift wrap than what's inside the package. You spend more time on what's inside the package, and you lose in the marketplace. I know it shouldn't be that way, but it is that way, and if I'm going to help you, we first have to acknowledge reality. So here's the hack. Here's the trick. You take what's actually the best, and you use that to boost your perception, because very few people, especially the mediocre jokers, will stand behind their product. They can't. So you just say, listen, pay me nothing today. And if I don't blow your mind, if I don't completely change your life related to blank, then I insist you tell me to stop billing and I will not charge you anything. Only if I make good on this promise should you then do nothing, and then 3 days after we do this webinar together, then I will charge you. Now, will people take advantage of you? Of course they will take advantage of you, right? 3% of the population is consisting of sociopaths and psychopaths, right? There are people out there that will take advantage of you. They are in the minority, and there's so few of them, you might as well not even worry about them because it's a waste of your brain cells. Most people are good, honest people who just say, wow, I appreciate what you did for me. This was worth more than what you're asking for, so therefore, please take my money. And by the way, do you have anything else that I can invest in? So if you want to accelerate your traffic getting strategy, you go to somebody else and say, let's do this project together, like with Russell and I, and how we did it. He kind of has a little small audience. There's a couple people in there, right? And hey, if it's good, you look like a hero. If it's not good, it doesn't really matter, does it? And nobody will have to pay for anything. Of course it's going to be good, though. And that's how you can get somebody to partner with you to generate traffic. If you want to do this with your own audience because you're a little nervous on your ability to sell on a webinar, don't use a sales webinar. Use a webinar as a fulfillment and use this pitch to sell it. If you want to do paid traffic, what better paid traffic, what better bait than this bait? Why everybody else is saying, give me money, give me money, give me money. You're saying, let me give you value, let me give you value. And then I will earn the right to keep your money if and only if I have value. So this is how we win the traffic game. We have something more attractive in which we're generating traffic to. We're not finding better ways to advertise on Facebook, right? We're not finding little hacks of targeting and this and that. And we're going to get into targeting and some of the other stuff here in a bit. What we're doing is if I want to win the game, changing the rules. Rule number 1, if my name is Jason, I win. That's how I win games, right? If I want to win races, I don't become a better racer. I don't go do strength and conditioning. I run races against 4-year-old children because I have longer legs than them, and I win. If I want to make money in poker, I'm not going to increase my ability to bluff. I'm not going to learn the mathematical calculations. I'm going to play poker with a bunch of rich poker players who barely know how to play poker and like to bet obscene amounts of money on the worst hands, and I will make more money in poker than the world's greatest poker players that ever exist. If you want to win the traffic game, change the rules. This is one of the many ways we have taught you thus far and how you change the rules, so therefore you win.
Yeah, and a few people are saying, what do I start with and how do I pick? And here's what you need to do. You need to assess the marketplace that you're in and see what's already being done. And if everybody is doing one thing, I highly suggest using one of the tactics we share. We have a few more coming up. To do the opposite, right? Zig when they zag. You don't want to be the same as everybody else. You want to show up in the marketplace different. And so if everybody else in the marketplace is doing free webinars, do the paid webinar. If everybody in the marketplace is doing paid webinars, do the free webinar, right? So really, when it comes to figuring out what works best for you, look at what it is. Also, what feels best to you? What does it feel like? This feels like something I could do. And just do that one thing. Again, though, I mentioned earlier, If you try something and it doesn't work, we're giving you many strategies today that you can go and try again with a slightly different format and see if that works. Once you figure out what does work, and sometimes it takes failing a few times, but once you figure out what does work, then you're able to move forward, and now you can scale, and that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow, so we won't go down the rabbit hole there. But let's go on to we have more examples here for them, things they could do.
And one last thing, because I'm going to give you even more. So if you're not overwhelmed yet, just wait a second, and you will be, right? Here is the secret to getting out of overwhelm, right? Flip a coin. If that doesn't work, roll a dice. If I give you 6 strategies and you're not sure which one to do, give yourself 60 seconds. And after the end of 60 seconds, you can't decide, and I give you 6 strategies, assign strategy 1 to the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, roll that dice. If it comes up number 4, I want you to do strategy number 4. It doesn't matter which strategy you start with. It doesn't matter which one you do. You don't have to evil genius chess game calculate this down to the nano move, right? Spin around in a circle blindfolded and pin the tail on the donkey, and that's the one that we go with, because get it going, and then it will become right, as opposed to trying to get it right from the start, all right? Let's talk about cold traffic. I'm going to show you a little fancy trick, because my goal here today is to show you many different angles and perspectives to eliminate this stupid excuse that I know some of you have that says, well, it won't work for me because I'm in a small market, but it won't work for me because I'm in a large market. It won't work for me because I don't sell information. It won't work for me because I'm famous or not famous or whatever the case may be. Whether it will or won't work, whatever you think it is, you're probably right. So here's yet another example to prove the point. So we took webinars into the real estate market. And so we partnered up with a real estate agent, Carrie Scholl, who is one of the top real estate agents in the whole country. I think she's number 33 in the United States. And with her, tapping into her audience, we created a webinar. And the webinar looks like this: free first-time home buyer online seminar. So to her market, we didn't call it a webinar, because what the heck is a webinar? But an online seminar, that makes sense. We're running this one every 15 minutes. So if you have an automated evergreen webinar solution, do this. If you don't, we will show you how to scale tomorrow. So this is the registration page. Now, how do we get them to the registration page? We run advertising. So here's the great thing about running advertising in local markets. Nobody does it. So we run ads. So this is an ad that Carrie created. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but we created 50 to 100 different ads. Because remember what I said to you yesterday? I don't need to know what works. I just have to accelerate what I put out there and then look at what works and do more of that. And so she says this is one of the many, many ads she created. Buying a home shouldn't lead you to the bottle. Drinks are for celebrating, and we can help you give you something to celebrate. How to choose a home you'll love. Sign up here, right? So this is the advertisement that we're running. Now, this is a first-time home buyer online seminar. This is in the Washington, D.C. area for her as a real estate agent, okay? Now, we created this webinar, and we licensed it to every local region we could possibly license it to. Our goal was to find one real estate agent in every different major area of real estate, and then just rebrand it. Rebrand the advertising, rebrand the webinar, rebrand the registration page, because I want to jump up and down in puddles, not the ocean. So who's targeting people that are first-time home buyers in a very small zip code geographic area and giving them information first? And just so you know this is some of the hooks that we played with, right? Did you know 65% of millennials who buy their home end up unhappy with the first home that they've ever purchased? So that's a hook. That's an angle. So that's what we built the whole webinar around. Why do people become unhappy more often than not with the home they purchase? Well, the big difference was picking the right real estate agent. How do you decide who's the right real estate agent and who's not? Well, the right real estate agents do these things. The real estate agents that are not that good, they don't do these things. And at the end, the call to action was, we would like to walk you through a reality check analysis to see if the home you want to live in is a type of home that you can afford. So they would contact the agent, book the call, and then the agent will get a buyer-broker agreement and then hopefully sell them a home. Now, the average agent, when they sell a home, it's a $12,000 transaction. So this is how I sold this to agents, by the way. I said, don't you think something like this could produce for you just one more buyer a month that you otherwise wouldn't have? And they said, of course, that makes sense, right? So what's one buyer a month times 12? $144,000 of extra newfound revenue. So I said, how many leads do you need a day to get one new buyer a month? And they're like, I don't know. I said, can we call it one? So if I get one new opt-in to this webinar a day, in 30 days I'll have 30 opt-ins. don't you suppose that if I have 30 opt-ins, one of those will lead to a sale? And they all agree, right? Guess what we're paying for an opt-in on Facebook with ads like the ones that I showed you? The answer is about $50. Sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? I don't know about you. To me, that's like next to free. I'm paying $50 an opt-in for somebody to watch a 27-minute webinar, which then leads them to call into an office of a real estate agent to make a $12,000 sale, because 90% of people who sign a buyer-broker agreement end up with that agent representing them and making that commission. $50 a lead is free. I would pay $1,000 a lead. Now, spoiler alert, this is how I have to manage the agent. So I'm doing this by proxy to manage you. How many leads are they generating? Well, we had an agent that ran it for 2 weeks and got 50 clicks, and then only 3 people opt in 2 weeks. So that is a 6% conversion rate on that squeeze page. Is that horrible or is that horrible? No, it's neither. It's actually pretty good. I don't care about conversion rates. I don't cash conversion rate in at the bank. All I look at is that person paid $53, that one individual real estate agent, to get 3 leads. And she's sitting over there, she's saying, Jason, I thought I was going to light it up with this. I'm like, if you got 3 leads from a $53 ad spend, I don't care if it was 6% conversion or not. Yeah, maybe we can improve the opt-in page. Maybe we can improve the targeting, blah, blah, blah. But you got 3 leads. One of them closes. You just paid $53 to make $12,000. That sounds like a good investment to me, right? Now here's the thing, here's the challenge. How do we target these people? This is why I like micro audiences. So if we could throw this back, oh perfect, right? There's a feature in Facebook very few people know about. It's called automated placement. And this isn't, you don't have to go into the Facebook ads section. You just create a post, and instead of boosting the post, there's a little automation thing. And this is where you can do your targeting right in. So this is how I taught the real estate agents. I start typing in first-time home buyer or first-time buyer. We can target them on Facebook. So we're targeting people between the ages of 26 and 39 within a 15-mile radius in a certain geographical area that are first-time home buyers. What's cool about this is Facebook suggested people that are interested in Zillow, okay, add them. People interested in Trulia, sure. People interested in starter homes, sure. People interested in mortgage loan. We were even doing mortgage calculators, right? I don't know which one of those audiences is going to work. I don't care which one of those audiences work. I know we're not going to get 1 million leads. I don't care if we get 1 million leads, right? We develop a system to get a few leads a month that lead to the right type of sale. Now, if you're selling $5 knickknacks, you're going to need 1 million people, but you're still going to pay more than $5 a lead, right? But my point here to you from a cold traffic perspective is let's do this with whatever you're selling. Let's find the people that are going to be the most hyper-responsive, that are going to make you the most money, that you need the least amount of them to get going and make work. And this is where it gets really exciting, because this is the model that I think most of you will do the best with. It solves a problem. And this is a very important problem. Can you put me back on the monitor here, because I'm going to look you in the eye and have a heart-to-heart with you on this problem. This is a very real problem, and to pretend otherwise is to do you wrong. I want to be very clear here. Running Facebook traffic to a webinar is very, very hard to make profitable. It is extremely hard. It took me a couple years to make it work, because even though my webinars are, most people say I'm the best webinar presenter in the world, so who am I to argue with them, right? I couldn't make it work, because here are the problems with webinars when you advertise them. Say I'm doing a live webinar, free live webinar coming up on Friday, and I start advertising to you on Facebook on Monday. Even if you opt in, the chances of you showing up to that live webinar, I mean, Haley's Comet comes around more often than that. Our show rates to people who have opted in were about 6%. So here's the other problem. The only thing that I could correlate between somebody opting in and showing up was recency. If they opted in an hour before the webinar started, yeah, I got them, right? Try timing Facebook ads and tell Facebook, hey, listen, don't start running this ad until 1 hour before the webinar starts, and watch them laugh in your face, right? It's not going to work that way. So you can't play the precise timing game on Facebook. You can't target it that way. The other problem is, and I believe this is my theory on Facebook, is that people, when they're in Facebook, they're not really paying attention. 90% of the time, they don't even know what they opted into if it's free. Think about that. How many things have you opted in on Facebook? Eight hours later, you check your email because you didn't even download the thing you opted into. You see some name and you say, who the hell is that stranger spamming my email inbox? I didn't give them permission. And then you open it and you're like, oh yeah, oops. You know, it's kind of like when you buy something on Amazon at 3 in the morning, half drunk. It shows up 2 days later and you say, who ordered this? Oh wait, I ordered that, right? That's my theory on Facebook.
Who does that?
Yeah. Millions of dollars worth of people. I mean, that's how the infomercial started at 3 in the morning with dead airspace and just turned into $1 trillion industry. So we need to sell them something to make Facebook work. But the way that most marketers would make webinars work on Facebook is they would sell you a product, a low-ticket product, and then they would follow up with a webinar. The problem with that is that's a little bit more work. It kind of eliminates the beginner from having some of that fun with the Facebook traffic. And so now let's show what the webinar paid traffic model looked at. We just finally figured this out. And really outside of high-ticket programs that you can buy from me, this is the first time that I've ever taught this. So here's what we do. We run an ad on Facebook that says, a webinar is happening this Thursday. It's $25 for you to attend this webinar live. If you stay for the full webinar, you get the recordings and the slides for free. If you can't stay for the full live webinar, or if you decide to skip it and just want the recordings, you have to pay $250. So this is an A-B offer. It's also called a red herring offer because I don't want anybody to buy the $250. I want to make the $25 offer look incredible compared to the $250, but even more important, I want people to come to the webinar and stay for the full webinar. So for 25 bucks, you can come, and as long as you can stay for the full webinar, you get the recordings and you get the slides, and maybe you want to throw in the transcripts for free. If you know you're not going to show up live, or if you know you're going to leave early or show up late, then just pay me $250. Now, by the way, whether you pay me $25 or $250, you get the exact same training. But if you want to save 200 bucks, come and watch the training. Now, by the way, just to warn you, the training is long. It's going to be 3 to 4 hours long. Here's some facts for you. First of all, 6% of people will buy the $250 item. I don't know why, but they do, okay? I convert higher on a $250 item when I make it a red herring than if I try to advertise to a cold audience and say, buy this thing for $250. So if you want to sell a $250 product, use this strategy. You will make more net dollars selling a $250 product this way by comparing it to a $25. But what's even more important to me is it's easier for me to generate a $25 sale on a webinar than it is for me to generate a free opt-in to a webinar. Why is that? Here's the thing. If it's free, people say, how good can it be? If it's paid, people pay attention more to it. And because it's priced competitively at $25 for a full-on half-day training, virtual live event for $25, can't you see how that sounds like an incredible deal? That sounds like an amazing deal. And we don't need that many. If it costs us $1 a click on Facebook, I have to just sell 1 out of 25 clicks. I just have to convert at 4% to break even. Once you get fancy, you can throw in upsells and downsells and checkboxes and this and that. This is why I like to be like, hey, show up live and you get the training for free, and then upsell the slides, upsell the transcripts, upsell the audio version, which is just you exporting it to MP3. However you need to do to get to break even or better before you show up on the webinar. Now you do it live once on a Thursday, and then you can automate it. This coming Thursday, webinar. This coming Thursday, webinar. It doesn't have to be live. Just like you watch stuff on TV all the time that isn't live. It's pre-recorded, but it is broadcast only between a certain time and another time. So that's your bait.
And again, what I love about this, we mentioned earlier, is essentially people are moving the free line. We're moving the paid line. And what it does is the person who pays $25, you bet are going to watch that webinar, because they've just invested for that information. So they're going to show up ready to learn. And that's really key here. It's about, if you're spending money to make money, we want to maximize the ROI as much as possible. And there's nothing like a free lead. And free is often a word that people, say, oh, well, social media is free and SEO is free. No, it's not. It's a lot of time and effort and work that goes into it. So although you might not take $1 out of your pocket in order to get $1 back, how much time are you putting and how much could have you saved? When you use this strategy, and you're getting $25 from someone who's registering to attend the webinar, they're going to show up in a different frame of mind and with more attention dedicated to you for that hour or two, however long that training is, because to them, they've raised their hand and said, this is so important to me that I'm willing to take out my wallet and invest in order to get the information I want. And because it is such a low investment, they're not going to not sign up if it's something they want. What you're going to do is you're going to remove anybody coming across, if it was a free registration, who is just interested or curious, right? So you get rid of those people. And so what you'll find is your conversions from a paid webinar are also going to go up because the people there have already invested in you and they're more likely to want to move forward if the information is quality, which we are assuming that you're going to do is create amazing content for them, and they're going to naturally want to just move forward. So let's show them the rest of it.
Well, here's what's really cool about this. There's a dilemma with webinars, and this is a very real issue that you'll fight with this when you try to make money with webinars. There is how much do I teach on a webinar where I'm selling a product at the end of it? And this is the age-old question. Many webinar trainers, and maybe you follow them, they suggest that you teach as little as possible. And I'm not in that camp, by the way. So a lot of the people that have learned from me, because most of them have studied underneath me, this is where they differ from me. Because I've always taught and I've always trained that it's better to give too much than it is to give too little. But I'm not naive enough to realize that if you overteach, you will undersell. So this is the dilemma that we face as webinar presenters. Typically, the more you teach to somebody on a free pitch webinar, the less you will sell. If you have to feed your family and pay the rent, it's better to not teach anything. Tell them why they need to do this and tell them what is involved, but then sell the how, right? This is a whole industry. People teach this other concept called useful but incomplete, right? Or another way is let's give them steps 2 through 7, but they can't do anything unless they buy step 1 from us. All of those things can be made to work. None of those things sit well with me. I've always felt that it's better to serve the customer and then make money as opposed to trick the customer into giving you money. It just seems, forget the ethical consideration for a second. Practically speaking, it just seems like a better model, but most people settle for, well, what the hell? I tried to teach somebody something anyway. I gave them too much information. They didn't pay me, so screw them. I'm going to give them too little, hold it back, and then they have to pay me for the good stuff, right? So this is an issue. Now, I've spent 6 years figuring out how to show the right type of information. So my free webinars are more informative than all the rest, but at the same time, they still set up the sale at the end. That's a huge art. We don't have time to get into that today. But here's the hack on this. You want to overteach? Charge somebody for it, and then they can't get enough of it. So when they show up for free, overteaching will keep them free. But if they pay, now we churn a webinar where we have to cut out 90% of what we'd like to teach to focus on that one thing, the 10% that matters. We can now add those other things in. So from a digital marketer perspective, your natural state is to overteach. Your natural state is to give too much content. That is you. So instead of trying to swim upstream, I want you to swim downstream. We're going to lean into that. So this is what this looks like. When we do the webinar, it is 4 hours long, typically. It's 3 hours training with an hour pitch. As soon as that's done, we automate this. So I do a live training one time, come this Thursday, it's live and attend for 25 bucks. If it goes well, next Thursday is come attend this upcoming webinar. It's not live, it's pre-recorded, and it goes for 4 hours. Most of you think, let me read your minds, okay? I'm channeling you right now. And okay, it's getting clear to me. You're saying, 4 hours, Jason, you're freaking insane. That's what's saying in your mind. You don't want to do 4 hours. Well, here's a little thing for you. We're 1 hour and 51 minutes into today, and we did over 2 hours yesterday. We've already blown past the 4 hour mark. Would you have rather us did a half hour yesterday and a half hour today? No. 4 hours is easier than 1 hour. You ever heard the saying by Mark Twain, if I had more time, I would have wrote you a shorter letter? You have to be way more calculated and deliberate if you're going short. It is easier to go long. And it's more appreciated as long as somebody paid for it in advance. And I have people on all the time tell me on webinars like this that nobody, Jason, would stay on a webinar for 1 hour and 51 minutes. Well, all of you have just stayed on a webinar for 1 hour and 51 minutes, right? For the same reason, I guess nobody watches movies that are 2 hours long, even though they watch them every single day of the week. So we sell them into a $25 training. We over-deliver by going longer, not shorter. So while everybody else is taking 1-hour webinars and trying to make them half-hour webinars, we're taking our 2-hour webinars and making them 4-hour webinars, and then those webinars sell more webinars. So see how I'm building on blocks for you? I showed you earlier the easiest pitch is to say, did you like this one webinar? Would you like more? Imagine what happens when you sell a $25 product for 4 hours and say, would you like 6 more of these, where we give you this and we do this and we do that. It doesn't have to be granular. They don't do the math. They don't say, okay, 4 hours, I pay 25 bucks, so if you're going to sell me 6 more, 6 times 25 bucks equals this, right? It can be whatever you want it to be. But again, this is a model. So we run this model, because this is not theoretical. Let me show you a real-world example. So we run an ad, and we run this in the Brazil market. So people think this doesn't work in the United States. This works even in markets that don't speak English. And this works in markets that are oversaturated or undersaturated, or entrepreneurs, or it works everywhere, right? So webinar coming this Thursday. It's 99 Eyes, which translates to $25, right? The webinar is about 4 hours long, and in it I teach them how to create information products. So I go for 3.5 hours on how to create what we call low-ticket information products that you can make in a single setting that you can sell for 5 figures. So I'm teaching people in Brazil, and they're translating me into Portuguese, how to create information products that they can sell for $4 to $10 that over the life cycle of them might make $10,000. So we run this ad. We get a return of 4 to 1. So it cost me about $5 to acquire a customer for $25. I don't have any upsells or downsells. I don't need them yet. One day, some other people are going to fish in this pond, and they're going to find bait that's going to be comparable to this, and then we might have to do that stuff. But right now, you put $1 in, you get $4 out. It's the greatest ATM I've ever been to in my life. Now, at the end of that training, we sell them a product that we call Product E-Class Brazil, where we say, hey, listen, that was one webinar. Now, here is a series of 6 webinars where I'm going to show you all the ins and outs of how to go from low-ticket products to high-ticket products, how to go from low-ticket products to membership sites, how to write the sales copy and target traffic to get it to your information products. So I don't care what you teach in 4 hours, it will create demand for other things just as much as it creates solutions for the thing that you teach. And then we sell this for $19.99 Eyes, which is the equivalent of about $500. And we niche it down to that audience. So I give them examples such as, I don't know if you know this, but in Brazil, they have to pay an import tax. So an iPhone in Brazil costs twice as much as an iPhone does in the United States. So when I give them the deal, I give them the reverse import fee. So I position this and I sell this to them as, we're going to give it to you for half the price. So you're getting 4 times as much. That's an example of micro-targeting and customizing the message. So you learn your audience and you serve them. But if I'm getting paid $4 every time I put $1 in, I feel a little bit obligated to go the extra mile for this audience, because every time I go an extra mile, I put a bunch more money in my pocket. Now, this is in a market where we don't have to differentiate. Anything would work in that market that's halfway done, because they're not used to seeing anything like that for now. But we still differentiate, because we don't just be different to be different. We differentiate because we know this model is better than any other model. So that's why we do it. The other reason we do this is nobody's really going to catch on. Even in the United States, nobody's going to say, are you serious, Jason? Sell them a $25 thing for 4 hours where they have to show up live? You are forcing them to go through 4 hours of training to save $200? Well, yeah. And if they go through 4 hours of training, which 80% of people do, don't you think you're going to sell people even if you're not good at selling? Because you've already sold them for 3 hours of content. So this is how you can get traffic, because now, even if they don't show up, which breaks my heart, it's not costing you anything. You know what costs you money? Somebody opts into a free webinar and doesn't show up. You can't, guess how much money you will make for that person? Here's a hint, $0. Doesn't matter how good your webinar, doesn't matter how good your offer is. And you had to pay money for them not to show up, right? In this particular case, unfortunately, if they don't show up, that's too bad for them and for you, but at least you didn't have to pay money for them not to show up. In fact, you will get paid money whether they show up or not. Now, those who do show up, you take them through a transformation in 3 hours, because it's hard to change somebody's life in 30 minutes, right? You take them through a transformation in 3 hours, you over-deliver, and then you ask them if they want to go further with you. You are not selling them at this point. They are asking you to buy, and that's important. And so this is the traffic strategy that I am most excited about, that you've heard it first time I've ever revealed it for free. So because I did this for you, All I ask in return is that please use this and then let me know how it works out for you.
And this really is the first time because we are live. So Karen and Willard and Shannon and Sharon and a few others who have said, are we live? Yes, we are live. We've been recording this live course as, for the future. We're practicing the, do it live first and then take that, package it up and sell it. So that's what we've been doing. So this really is the first time that Jason shared that, and we're super excited. And it kind of goes, if you've been running webinars, if you're not new and you have been running webinars and you found that it's getting more difficult to get people, not to register, but to show up. That's the big thing that a lot of people are struggling with. There is a lot of strategies you can use to get better show-up rates, but Jason's found that the best strategy is just get them to pay for the webinar ahead of time, and that almost guarantees that they'll show up. And again, for those that don't show up, they've given you $25. So in terms of your advertising, you haven't lost money to acquire them. It's their loss, and of course, if you've promised them the replay or something like that, hopefully they catch that. But there's still going to be a few people who don't. So should we answer a few questions that have come in?
Yeah. So
cool. So let's see here. Sorry. So Karen asks, how do you manage the admin for the strategy? Do you charge them $250 if they don't show up? What happens if they book the 25 hours but don't show up and leave early?
I like that. So I am blessed to have a great team of people, and they take care of all that for me. So the short answer is somebody's watching it somewhere and time-stamping it and this and that, right? Those are minor details. So the one thing I've gotten really good at in my life is recognizing what really matters and what doesn't matter that much. And those minor details, I know that we can solve them. And if push comes to shove and we have to give people the benefit of the doubt and give them the training even if they don't necessarily earn it, I guess we could do that. But even better news is you can pay a college kid, a high school kid, whoever, and just say, listen, they logged in at the webinar at this time. Did they show up? Fact check this, double check this. I hope you have this problem where you have so many people who've bought your thing that you have to spend extra time figuring out who's 25, who's 250, who earns it, who doesn't earn it. Again, I wish nobody would pay the 250 and everybody would pay the 25, but consumers are the most interesting species on the planet Earth.
Yeah, it's so true. And actually, Yafar asks, is there an ideal time to schedule a webinar? And it kind of goes,
yes,
what you were saying.
There is.
There is.
Whenever you want to is the ideal time, right? If you're a morning person and that's when you show up the best, schedule it in the morning. If you're a night owl and you show up better later in the night, schedule it at night, right? If your kids have a dance competition, don't schedule it then, right? So there might be strategic times in general. The best time to do a webinar is on a Tuesday. The second best time to do it is on a Thursday. The worst time to do it is on a Sunday, right? But have I done Sunday webinars? All the time, right? Have I not been able to do Tuesday webinars because of my schedule conflicts? Of course. You schedule it not for your audience. You schedule it for you because you are the $1 million racehorse. So you got to take care of yourself. And so you schedule for the time that makes sense for you.
And I would just add to that the one thing to pay attention to too is, when is your audience actually going to be available to watch? So if you're doing this live and you're picking the time that is best for you, make sure that it's also not necessarily best for your audience, but it is a time they're available. So for us, we found that 11 a.m. Tuesday or Thursday works the best. But most of our audiences are entrepreneurs. Most of our audience get to set their own schedule. If your audience doesn't, and for a fact they work 9 to 5, could they step out and watch the webinar? Maybe. But if you know for sure they're not, pick a day of the week, either in the morning or in the afternoon, that's beyond when they're unavailable. Because that does play in. And actually, in some of the marketplaces, for example, when I was working with personal trainers, they're busy training clients at certain times. So you know what the peak times are for them in their business. So you don't necessarily want to try to conflict with that. So you can do yourself some favors if you know your market well, know when they are most likely to be available, and then choose the time during the week that works best for you.
The one thing you have to remember, though, is you only have to do this live once if it's good. If it's good, do it live once. Do it at Friday at 3 a.m. If you break even and you know it's a winner, great, because then you can run the automation to be at Thursday at 2 p.m., right? Here's the problem you're going to face, is you can't please everybody, right? So if I do my 11 a.m. webinars, all my people in the UK are pissed off, right? But if they're happy if I do an 11 a.m. webinar. But all my people in Australia are pissed off, because it's like early in the morning, or if we move it to this time, then the people that work are pissed off. If we move it to that time. So I realize I'm going to piss somebody off, so I might as well make myself happy. So I built it around my schedule. Now, obviously, if you're going to sell stuff to the Jewish community on the sabbatical, that's probably not going to work. So there are clear times when you make adjustments. But in general, time doesn't matter. You know what matters? Having the model. This is a model that's effective. Time becomes inconsequential if you have the right model.
This is a great question from Lawrence. Can a webinar be offered in other languages? I speak Italian and English, but have followers in Japan, China, Dubai, Morocco, and Turkey.
So the literal example that I gave you, Lawrence, is I speak 0 Portuguese. It took me 6 webinars to pronounce "hey eyes" right, and I still don't know if I'm pronouncing their currency right or not, right? Yeah, it didn't matter. So we translate them, or more importantly, we localize them. Which I don't really understand the difference, other than we put it into not just a word-for-word translation, but something that makes more sense. But there's, those people are cheap to hire to localize. I think it's like $20 an hour. And so I would do this. This is how we were doing these in these foreign languages. We did this in China too, is I would do the training in English. If you spoke English, congratulations. On their live, you would get the benefit. If you didn't speak English, you could still show up live. You would have no idea what I was talking about, right? But you could be there live, and then we would take the recordings and localize them. Now, once they were localized, then we ran the webinar replays in the localized version with me speaking English with the Portuguese subtitles underneath of it, right? And so I would highly recommend that you do that. But again, minimum viable product. Put it out there first the simplest way possible. I was the keynote speaker at the largest digital marketing conference in Germany last year in Stuttgart. And I showed up and spoke English, and most people knew what I was saying. But, the guy, his name is Marcelo, he's a really cool guy that was running the event. He says to me, he goes, "Can you try to speak slower, Jason?" And I said, "You asked the impossible, because I speak so fast, most English-speaking people can't understand me. But you make do. It's not going to be perfect, but if you have the heart and you come with service to your audience and you show up ready to help them, the rest of that stuff kind of works itself out." But yeah, there's a huge untapped market abroad. It's tricky, though. For whatever reason, Brazil people are more open-minded to buy stuff online, but other markets might not.
Yeah. I did a seminar in Italy, and I actually had a translator. The same thing, asked me to slow down, which is very difficult. But if you are, obviously you mentioned that you already have somewhat of a following, and perhaps they're English speaking, and that's why you've been able to attract them. But in terms of getting people to localize your presentations, Upwork.com is a great resource to find people who can do that. And again, you don't have to have a voiceover. You can just have the transcription that you then get edited onto the video, and there's different tools that can do that for you. So it's a simple process. Obviously, you got to be able to accept the currency. Customer support may be an issue, so you may have to hire someone there. But for those who have actually invested time in it, like Jason has in the Brazilian market, I know people who have invested time in the German market, in French market, all these different places. It's actually, it's been a huge benefit to their business. I also know some people who simply license their products to certain people in those industries that already have kind of an information business there. So there is a lot of opportunity there for you. So I think it's worth exploring.
3,000 people came that were registered for this event in Germany. I don't even know people, with rare exception, that can bring 3,000 people in the United States. So you talk about an underserviced market that you are more likely to get traffic in Germany than you are in the United States if you're doing digital marketing. Isn't that crazy? It makes sense, though.
So Jonathan asks, do I need to register again for tomorrow's webinar? If you're here today with us, you should be registered for tomorrow's webinar. We have a full day of content for you. We're going over marketing, we're going over scale and growth, and we'll show you the technology that has powered this and can help you power your webinars as well. If you're worried about whether you're registered or not for some reason, you can just go to the livestreamsystem.com and you can click the button and re-register. That way you don't miss out. There's no chance of you missing out. I guarantee you're registered, just in case, for whatever reason, maybe you didn't get an email or something like that. So you can go there. Let's see what else we have, if we have anything. So Scott asks, what about using an evergreen webinar that they can pay for and see it whenever they want?
Good question. So on-demand webinars is what we would call that. I think, isn't that what you call it too, AJ?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, watch it whenever you wish to. I'm generally not a fan of those, although there are certain applications where those make sense. The reason why is if people feel like they can watch it whenever, they tend to never watch it. And so I'm more of a fan of force-feeding my content down your throat than allowing you to choose when and where you will consume it. You know, this is important work we're doing here, so I want to eliminate all the variables if I possibly can. Now, with that said, there are times when on-demand can work. So we designed this webinar marketing campaign for this company who had an alternative to Novocaine for dentists. And they were going out there trying to get adoption of this new, different thing that dentists can use where you didn't have to shoot somebody in the gums. You could just, a numbing agent. It was recently approved and now it was ready to roll it out. It's a brand new invention, which is always really hard to sell. People don't like new, right? They don't like to try new things, especially on their patients if they're dentists. And so what we did was we allowed an on-demand webinar, but as soon as they unlocked the code for it to be on demand, there was a countdown timer. And that countdown timer only allowed it to be on demand for a limited amount of time. So they can choose when they wanted to watch it, because who knows when dentists go golfing, because that's like their favorite thing to do in the world, right? So I could work around their golf schedule, but still have the urgency for them to get it on demand when they wish to. Now, there are other times where on demand might make sense. So if you're on a website, and they scroll underneath past a certain point and you have a thing that slides up that says, free webinar available for a limited time, unlock it on demand right now. That might make sense in that context, right? Or your email PS signature when you're doing personal email. Free on demand webinar reveals blah, blah, blah. Because then that makes sense to use that. But those are for the little tiny bits of money. Those are the $10 and $20 and $50 bills that are hanging around. In general, we don't do on-demand. Even when our one was on-demand, it was watch yesterday's replay. So they would go to select a time. I don't know if you caught that training earlier. They go to select a time, learn there was no time. There was only the option of yesterday's replay. And we would rather have them go through that rigmarole than feel like it was on demand, because people will typically discount that which is on demand.
Yeah, one of the features we add to have a webinar, and we'll show you that tomorrow, you don't need to go searching for it, is the just-in-time webinar. And what we found was that, the replay is good, but just-in-time converted better. And the reason for it really is, and we go back to, we've mentioned this many, many times, it's about the environment that you create. Right, and the mind shifts that happen when people believe they're there, they are paying attention, and it's presented in a way that they feel is, they have to pay attention right now. Anytime you do on demand, where it's on the page or something like that, a couple of things happen. First of all, if they know it's not live, or it's not in an environment where they can't exit because they're paying attention, it looks like a live webinar room, et cetera, et cetera. Anytime they know for a fact that it's a recorded, they're going to wonder why they can't pause and scroll and move forward, and it creates frustration for them, right? And so we know that conversions work best when you don't allow that stuff. We also know when you hide the buy button until the point in that you mention the sale. But if they are in an environment where it's like a video, let's say, for example, Netflix, people get very annoyed when they can't, if you can't fast forward on Netflix, well, what's the point in this? If I can't skip to the next one, what's the point in this? So it creates a different experience for the user from that standpoint and what their expectations are. When they register for a webinar, whether it's live or whether it's automated, the expectation is they have to show up and they have to pay attention for the period of time that you've put in place. Any other environment, it changes that expectation and it changes the experience for them, and you don't get to control that in the way that you do. So even if you tell them, hey, this is a recorded webinar, but it's only available for you to watch now for the next hour, it's the fact they're in that environment that allows you to do that, to control their attention, which is the most important thing, and allows you to position yourself and then pitch at the end for whatever it is you want to do. So it is a very important point. What we've seen, and to back this up, is that, because a lot of people say, well, I see a lot of people moving to on-demand away from webinars. That's great. What we've seen is people who have had on demand then put it into the EverWebinar environment, and their conversions go up because of exactly what Jason said. It's the fact that they're in an environment that this is going to go away and they won't have another opportunity to watch it that causes them to pay attention. And that's all we're trying to do. In this noisy world where everybody's attention is being pulled 24/7, you can't go into the bathroom without hearing someone having a phone call. I mean, I don't know who takes an important phone call while they're on the loo, but the reality is people do. We're fighting for people's attention 24/7, and so we have to create an environment that gets them to stop what they're doing and give us their attention for the time that we need it. Whether that's 20 minutes or whether that's an hour, we found that nothing works better than the webinar environment. So great question.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way. If it was up to my children, they'd eat the dessert first. But I don't let them. If it's up to your customers, they think that they say, just give me the punchline, just give me the end result. But if we don't set up the context first, we are doing them disservice. Now, context is everything, so you want to use reason why. So I literally will tell my people, I will say, you have to watch this in real time, because if I don't set it up this way, I fear you won't get the most out of this. And they'll say, oh, that makes sense. Otherwise, they'll be like, yeah, this is weird. Why don't you just put it on YouTube and I can skim it and watch it however I want to. If I just pre-frame it and say, listen, if I gave this to you to watch whenever you want, I know you probably won't watch this. If I allow you to skip around and see this out of order, I think you're going to miss critical information that's too important. So I'd rather risk you ignoring this video because you can't consume it whenever you want. I'd rather risk that than risk you missing something vital that could be everything when it comes to blank. So just give it context, and almost always people will be like, well, that makes sense, and now they're fine.
Sean has a great question. I have a great answer for you, Sean. But the question is, have you seen a successful business model consisting of presenting all live webinars without the offer to pay for it on demand? His thought is attendees tap into their personal experience or practical application knowledge. Attendees will be charged a fee to attend each webinar on a bi-monthly basis with Q&As. And I would appreciate your insight. So first of all, before I let Jason share his thoughts, so I've seen this done very successful, where the only way you get the information if you there attend live, and it's been done by coaches who I know for a fact through testing they realize that by controlling that environment, getting the person to show up, that commitment to themselves to come to that environment to learn is going to create the most results on the back end. And so what they'll do is they have a caveat. It's 6 weeks, it's live, there's no other way to get this training. If you don't show up live, you're out. No refunds, no guarantees, you have to be there live. If you're committed to that, people invest with that. People still don't show up, people still get kicked out. But what it does is it creates a level of expectation that gets a higher buy-in, that gets higher results because they're more likely to take advantage of that. So it's a great business model, and I think you absolutely could do it and be successful doing it.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily start there. But I do like the idea, if gym memberships work this way, where they would kick you out and quit charging you if you never showed up, then no gym would ever exist. They would go out of business. They overbook a gym by something like 500% because they know that most people who sign up will never show up, just like they overbook airlines. So in certain instances, the model makes more sense to sell it, and then whether they do or don't consume it, that's on the consumer. But there is something to be said at a certain point in time when you want to be different than the rest and you really want to make a difference. You say, this is a special program and this program works this way. You can't just buy your way in. If you don't also do the work, I'm going to kick you out and I'm going to either give you your money back, we've ran that model before, right? Or I am not going to give you your money back because this is the agreement you and I have come to terms with. And that's a really effective position to take in the marketplace. But again, that's a little bit advanced. When I'm starting out, to me, is if I can just get somebody to feel like they're one step closer and engineer a movement this much, I'm happy selling them a $1,000 solution if I just make their life 1% better. Because you compound 1% better over the lifetime of an average human being, and $1,000 is practically stealing in order to get a 1% improvement in your life. So you don't have to completely miraculously make over somebody's whole life. If they just feel 1% happier and you charge them $1,000 to feel 1% happier for the rest of their life, who got the better deal, you or them, right? So let's start there, and then let's see where we can go.
Okay. A couple more questions, and then we'll wrap today. So DJ says, for webinars, is it a good idea to launch and making them available for a period of time, then take them away, and then maybe reschedule them quarterly or semi-annually? Surely different audiences are available at different times. Yeah.
So again. First of all, if I'm going to worry about different audiences, this is the only audience I worry about. The 20% who will spend 80% of the money available in that marketplace. So if I want to cater, that's who I cater to. What you will see in the marketplace, and your general tendency, if you're like an average human being, is to treat everybody equally. Your mom and dad told you to treat everybody equally. In school, they treated the idiot just as well as they treated the genius, and they slowed down the coursework to the dumbest kid in the classroom. That's how it was done. That's how we've been taught to do it our whole life. That's fair. Maybe it isn't fair. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, in the marketplace, I don't want to be fair at all. I want to find those few consumers who are likely to get the biggest result and who are likely to spend the most amount of money and be happiest with the money that they've spent to get the result, and that's who I'm targeting. So if my target market specifically, I've noticed, is this type of person who likes to consume it in this way, who needs it put in this tense, then that's what I am going to do, as long as I can do it in a way that I feel comfortable and healthy and excited to do that with. So if I lose 90% of my audience because I only attend webinars after dinner at 7:30 at night, and I know that webinar, or that audience is just hobbyists who don't take this seriously, because come on, how serious are you going to take it if you're not going to give it more attention, right? Screw them. They might as well not exist, because all of them combined make less than 1% of the best audience I have. Not only do they make 1% of the money, they're 100 times more a pain in the ass.
So true, so true. All right, last question, and then I'll recap what we've gone over and what we're going to do tomorrow. But Vicky asked, about are products better than information? I'm not really understanding the question. Perhaps. To me, information is a product, is a course, is coaching, is consulting. It's the way, the packaging is what's important. And so we mentioned earlier about, you can put the same information into a book as you can into a live event, and obviously the price is going to be drastically different. So depending on what you feel is probably best for your audience is probably going to be the correct answer. And of course, depending on where the business is and the scalability of it. I've seen many people put their product into a course that they send out, and then they have live Q&A multiple times a week so people can be coached through that product, as the application of the product is more important than the information inside of the product. So it really depends on where you're at and what you feel is value. Of course, information is everywhere, and you can go to YouTube and probably find information about any topic you want. My wife has gotten into crochet, and she's forever watching videos on YouTube, learning different things. But she was also joined a crochet club that sends her a new pattern to do. I think it's every month. She gets a package, and it's an 8-month program that she's subscribed to.
Nice.
And so, there's the transaction. So in terms of whether products are better than information, it's really the positioning of it and what is it that you are providing. We've given you many ways to run webinars today, from free to paid and everywhere in between. And that's what is important to understand with your market, is what's going to work best. We can't tell you, you need to test and experiment, but obviously we mentioned earlier, if everybody else is doing one thing, something different is probably going to work better than being the same as all. But do you have any thoughts on information versus products?
Yeah, I think it's solutions. I don't think in vehicles, right? So if my best solution I can engineer to this audience to give them the most value and also make me the most money is a physical product, then we ship physical product. If it's a software, we ship software. If it's something else, then that's what we ship, right? So I am a dog enthusiast, reluctantly at first, but then I fell in love with these 2 German Shepherds that we rescued. And since I have fallen in love with these 2 boys, I have spent money on the following things. I have spent money on dog training because one of these dogs was insane when we got him. Leash pulling, barking at everything. A squirrel would make him go crazy for days, right? So I started studying how to train him on a leash, and I bought books on it, I bought video programs on it, and that was good, but it wasn't enough. So one of the people that I watched on YouTube also said, hey, I'm going to be in LA at this time and this day. Would you like to pay for a session? I said, hell yeah, I would. So I bought 2 sessions from him, and I came down. So now I'm doing services. So I bought information on how to train my dogs. I bought services from this trainer to help me with the dogs. We got special collars and other special gadgets and things to help with the dog behavior. So now I'm buying physical products for these dogs. What to speak of the sheer amount of food that I pay for them. I swear they're more expensive to feed than the kids are, right? So I've spent money with them on that as well. And if there was some software to buy that would train the dog, I'd probably buy that too. So that's the only thing I haven't bought yet. But think about it from that perspective is, what does my customer buy? And I can use a webinar to sell any of those things to an audience. And in fact, if I am the only one that sells information, but I know my audience wants the best types of leashes, or they want the best types of food nutrition, or they want the best types of this, I will make it my mission to go out there on their behalf and find the true, real solutions. Not the best marketed ones, right? But the best actual ones. And I will put them in front of my customers, give them a better experience than they otherwise would get, and then I'll make a cut. I'll make a commission. And I can run webinars selling other people's products just as easily as my own. My most profitable webinar of all time was selling a product that wasn't even mine.
Great. So guys, so far over the last 2 days, we've gone over structure, message, and offer. Today we went over, audiences, how to build your own audience, how to leverage other people's audience, and how to build audiences from cold traffic, how to do free, paid, and leveraged webinars. And so at this point, you really know how to actually, what to say on the webinar, and you know now how to attract people to come and pay attention to you on the webinar. Tomorrow is the last piece of the puzzle, and this is the marketing, scaling, and automation piece. And we're going to show you the best marketing plan to use in order to create the maximum sales and profits. We're going to show you the tech tools that will simplify your life to help you increase your webinars, conversions, and of course, we wanted you to be able to do this without having to hire other people to set things up for you, right? There's nothing worse than having to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars to somebody else to set it up for you only for it to go wrong. So we'll show you the easiest way to do that. And then we'll show you how to basically turn your webinars into 24-hour sales machines that work for you 365 around the clock. And we've touched on some of that stuff today. Tomorrow we'll show you the system that hopefully will allow you to take everything we've taught over the last 3 days and take your business to the next level. If you missed day one or today you were in and out for whatever reason, we'll be sending out the replays. They'll be available only until we go live tomorrow, so make sure you watch those. We'll make it so you can skip ahead and stuff, obviously, so you don't have to sit through the whole training if you've been here with us, but you've missed certain things or you want to go back to certain things. One of the things I was saying yesterday, and I encourage you to do again, is actually even if you've been here the entire time with us, which is quite the feat in of itself, and we appreciate your attention and your attendance, is to just go through it again anyway, go back over your notes, and start to actually put into practice exactly what it is you're going to do moving forward. By the end of day one, you actually should have somewhat of a format and formula for your presentation with your stories and what your offer is going to be. By the end of today, you should now understand what is the best way for you to create an audience in order to run your webinars and be successful. And by the end of tomorrow, you know exactly what to do to be able to run these and have huge success, so that hopefully next week or the week after, you can run your first webinar, sell your first course, and be off to the races and growing your business in 2020. So we appreciate you being here with us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, have a good day.
Bye now.